What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 5 SHW to Logatown. A danger in the distance. Sabo stared intently at Zoro, who glared at his captain in annoyance. The Wolfman just grinned cheekily and chuckled as Sabo hummed to himself, appraising his younger brother's first mate critically. A few more moments pass like this before Sabo snaps his fingers with a grin plastered on his face. You're right, Lou. Luffy smiled smugly as Sabo praised him. He is a dark-skinned, green-haired ace. Under different circumstances, Zoro might have been amused or happy to hear that. However, since the correlation between himself and the mysterious eldest brother of Luffy was angry at the world, permanent resting bitch face, runs on instinct instead of actually thinking, and quick-tempered, the swordsman wasn't exactly thrilled over the comparison. While the two brothers, who honestly looked like they could pass as genuine blood-related siblings, laughed at the swordsman's expense, Usopp just stared at the crew's cook with pity. Not that Sanji was able to see him. Zoro huffed and went back to downing sake like there was no tomorrow. The action did little to dissuade the brothers from laughing, perhaps even making it worse. The groans of pain coming from Sanji as he regained consciousness just added fuel to the fire. From her table closer to the heart of the village, Nami shook her head in exasperation. She had a sneaking suspicion that her fiancé would end up becoming like this whenever his brothers were around. The navigator thanked her lucky stars that Luffy wasn't so immature that he'd keep being childish and happy-go-lucky with their new family. It wasn't exactly subtle that Luffy saw Zoro, Sanji and Usopp as his brothers as well, but he at least put his duties and role as captain first when it came to them. Nami couldn't help but smile however as Usopp excitedly asked to hear more about the infamous Ace. Between Ace and Sabo, I'll deal with Sabo any day. Nami mused as she recalled all the stories Luffy shared regarding the hot-headed eldest brother. Speaking of Ace, Nami frowned as she thought back to the conversation between Luffy and Jinbei earlier. Flashback. A devil fruit that not only cancels out the powers of other devil fruit users but weakens them as well. Jinbei was troubled by the news Luffy shared with him. The Wolfman shared the fisherman's sentiment. Ace has very little chance of coming out on top of a fight against the devil fruit himself, but for the user to be Teach of all people as well. Is the guy really that much of a threat? Luffy was aware that Teach was the one to scar his father, but Shanks couldn't have been an emperor when he'd gotten it. The Wolfman also reasoned there could have been more to the story. Was it a duel or was Shanks fighting multiple opponents at the time? Was he protecting someone? There was too much Luffy didn't know. Jinbei's grave expression told Luffy that while Mihawk didn't go into detail, he wasn't exaggerating the threat Teach posed either. Teach is meticulous, Luffy. The whale shark fishman didn't seem to be recalling pleasant memories as he talked about the former Whitebeard pirate. Meticulous, patient, and very intelligent. The long chains of events he plans for, I'm pained to say it but I doubt even Whitebeard himself could perform such feats. The one flaw Teach has however would be in combat. The rotund pirate was a master at planning from the shadows but a straight-up combatant. That was where he was outclassed by others. He isn't pathetic enough to be bested by just about anyone. He has lived most of his life as a pirate in the New World after all. It's only amongst the combatants of the New World that he falls far down in the ladder. That was troubling. If Teach's combat capabilities only began to fall in rankings when it came to the New World, then Ace was in a lot of trouble. Luffy knew his brother was strong, and with a near indomitable spirit to boot. That won't save him against Teach though. At Luffy's grimace, Jinbei smiled wryly as he had a pretty good guess on what went through the fellow captain's head. Well, Ace does have a knack for having things work out in the end. Jinbei's jest prompted a snort from Luffy in response. The fishman wasn't wrong, but at the same time luck tended to run out when you least wished it to. Best to keep an eye out for him anyway. No sense in risking that hothead losing more than his pride. Luffy grumbled, knowing even if he beat Ace to the ground the prideful bastard would end up chasing Teach anyway. Jinbei nodded his head in resignation before turning back to the navigator who'd silently stood by her lover's side. Nami just stared impassively as Jinbei bowed before her again. I'm sorry for Arlong, once again, Nami. Jinbei apologized, guilt heavy in his eyes. Perhaps in another life things could have been different. Perhaps. Nami agreed. She was willing to say that under different circumstances, yes, she may have actually been friends with Arlong. Jinbei smiled sadly at her one more time before turning back to Luffy and shaking his hand. I suppose I'll see you in the New World. The Wolfman grinned in return, hopefully as my helmsman. I look forward to it. Jinbei laughed as he jumped into the sea. Flashback. Nami was broken out of her memories when Koala unceremoniously dropped into the seat next to her carrying a whole crate of beers. The navigator blinked as her fellow Oranget offered her a beer. So I've heard a lot about your boyfriend. Koala smirked evilly as she saw Luffy stiffen from the corner of her eye. And I'm sure he's shared some leverage about mine. Now Sabo was the one to stiffen, white as a sheet. Nami's confusion evaporated immediately and the Straw Hat's navigator now sported an equally conniving look. So many juicy bits, so little time. Usopp and Zoro couldn't help but burst out in laughter as the brothers looked like their whole worlds came crashing down. Their respective girlfriends giggling together as they whispered more and more details their boyfriends probably wished were never brought up again. We've lost any chance of reputations as badasses, haven't we? Sabo knew the answer but he just asked for the heck of it. Yup. Nami knows about Sabrina by the way. Luffy replied, praying to God Sabo didn't respond with a similarly dreadful memory. That's fair, Split. Sabo decided not to mention the fact that Koala also knew about Lucy. The idea that she knew about the split incident seemed to already put the Wolfman in a state of crippling despair. In an attempt to take his captain's mind off the death of his street cred, Usopp decided to ask him how he described Sabo. After he and Zoro had their fun laughing their asses off, of course. Hey Luffy, you described Ace but how'd you describe Sabo? Huh? Oh Luffy snapped out of his gloom and turned to Sabo with squinting eyes. The blonde just smiled back with a raised brow. The blonde brother was curious to hear it. Responsible, rational and, well? Luffy grinned cheekily. If Zoro is Ace then Sabo is Sanji. Shi. Take away Sanji's obsession with treating all women as queens, yeah, they're the same, ha 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 ha. Usopp agreed with a thumbs up, ignoring the scowl Zoro was sending their captain's way. He was responsible, wasn't he? While Zoro was huffing and denying the notion he wasn't responsible or rational, Sabo turned his attention to the swirly eyebrowed cook his brother had compared him to. Honestly, he couldn't exactly be mad or amused. Well, that was a lie, he was amused at the cook's position. That amusement turned into surprise though when he realized something. Is he asleep? The Straw Hats all collectively snapped to their cook who had indeed fallen asleep. What the heck? Usopp crouched next to the cook and scratched the back of his head trying to figure out how Sanji managed to fall asleep like that. 100 belly says his old man forced him to train in a similar situation. Zoro actually pulled out about 100 belly from his pocket and placed it on the table. Bet. Luffy pulled out the same amount. I say it was punishment for when a patron did the same thing as Koala did. Sabo shook his head in exasperation as his brother and Green Ace shook on it. The revolutionary returned to gazing back on the cook who Koala had shoved into a tree after he decided to flirt with her. Sanji's head just hung limply downwards, his forehead touching the soft grass, as his legs rested against the ground as well. His arms were locked to his sides as they, along with his stomach region, were the sections of his body still in the tree. Before they came to the beach they, along with Garp, came across Sanji. The moment the blonde cook's eyes landed on Koala they had turned into hearts and he made a beeline towards her with a typhoon for legs. That coupled with the Melorine had apparently been enough to push Koala out of her usual sweet, cute, cheeky demeanor and straight into cruel calculating combatant. The young revolutionary had given the cook a black eye, busted lip, and knocked out a few teeth as well before shoving him through the tree. While Sabo wasn't sure if he should have felt proud of Koala or sorry for Sanji, Garp shuddered and mumbled something about brothers having similar tastes and a strange sense of déjà vu. Wonder what the old man meant by that. The majority of the village had turned in for the night. Well, to be more accurate, most of the village had passed out and were now sprawled out all over the place. By the tree the lovely Koala had shoved him into, Sanji continued sleeping. Zoro and Usopp had decided to sleep by the tree as well just for the heck of it. Dr. Nako wasn't pleased that Zoro wasn't going to sleep in the infirmary but the old doctor wasn't about to deny the man who could wipe the floor with fishmen like nothing. Before the two had gone to sleep however, Usopp had convinced Zoro to join him in a childish and immature endeavor. With a lot of stifled laughs, the pair had left a little present for Sanji when the cook woke up. Despite the immaturity of it, even Nami had a bit of a giggling fit when she saw what the two idiots had been up to. She wished Koala had stuck around to see it but unfortunately the two revolutionaries had to leave and meet with her father-in-law. It was quite a shock to learn who her husband-to-be's bloodfather was but after everything else, she got over the shock after a day. Speaking of fathers, her own was currently being helped stay upright by her older sister. Genzo hadn't warmed up to Luffy completely but the old sheriff was in the mood for a drink so he had the Wolfman sit down and take quite a few shots with him. While the sheriff was completely plastered, Luffy wasn't even tipsy and just leaned against one of the houses, staring off into the starry sky with another beer in hand. Need help? Nami offered, seeing Genzo beginning to recite some butchered pledge of sorts which was both amusing and concerning. The navigator was sure, may the useless navy rot in the depths, wasn't in any pledge of allegiance. Najiko just shook her head. Nah, I got our old man. The brunette gave her little sister a salacious smile. You two little lovebirds just tie the knot tight, alright? Get it really deep. Luffy spat out his beer and had a coughing fit as Nami turned blood red in embarrassment. Najiko. The young Orangette's reprimand was met with laughter as the older sister took Genzo into his house, the man singing Old MacDonald but with bang bang bang, bang bang bang, shush, instead of yo. Just make sure to use protection. Nami truly wanted nothing more than to bury herself 6 feet under to hide away from her embarrassment. Luffy was trying to get back to enjoying the night sky but, well, his mind wandered to other things. The Wolfman's eyes left the stars and zeroed in on his navigator's dangerously enticing figure. So enraptured by temptation, Luffy failed to realize he'd sprouted his wolf ears and tail again, the latter wagging excitedly. Nami just stared at her fiancé who had zero idea of how he was affecting her right now. The Orangette's embarrassment faded rather quickly as her own pair of eyes drank the delicious sight that was her husband-to-be. The navigator bit her lip when her eyes landed on his exposed six-pack, the rock-hard abs that just screamed for her to trail her fingers on. Gods, Luffy would destroy me. Nami suddenly froze as images of just how such scenarios in their bed could play out short-circuited her brain, until desire took over. With a sultry smile, Nami made her way to Luffy, swaying her charms to their most deadly potential. The shift in her lover's eyes just made her feel the need, the desire to be wrecked, strengthened. I think the big bad wolf wants his little orange riding hood. Luffy's eyes stared deep into Nemo's as she teased him, egged him on. The wolf would have his feast, and he would have it now. Luffy was ecstatic, and to say he was eager would be the understatement of the decade. Unfortunately, that horniness came to a screeching halt as soon as he remembered who his wife-to-be was, or more specifically her tastes. His despair was nothing compared to the wolf within though. Why, you ask? Because it turns out when it came to sex, Luffy had no reservations about how rough he treated his love. Much to the wolf's dismay, his host even seemed to revel in breaking in his mate. The wolf had always been one for domination, the term, the word itself, holding a special place in its heart. Yeah, that word has been ruined. Sabo kept Koala in the corner of his eye, quietly offering her the chance to speak about what was going on in her head. The blonde knew her enough that while she was quite the vocal individual, she had moments where she preferred the silence. It seemed tonight was one of those moments, and so Sabo kept the majority of his focus elsewhere. Koala knew the offer was there and she was thankful for it, but she was more thankful that Sabo kept his silence. Arlong was gone. One of the people she wanted most to see the day of equality amongst all become reality. Fate is rarely willing to abide by what we wish for though, and one of her dreams was turned to ash. Jimbei, the young revolutionary, could not help but purse her lips as the Knight of the Sea came to mind. If she was this affected by Arlong's death, she could scarcely imagine how the warlord was dealing with it, especially since he was the executioner. As Koala continued gazing off into the distance, Sabo directed them towards the agreed-upon location. Truth be told, Sabo wasn't expecting to see his little brother anytime soon. Just 2 years after he and Ace left, even less so. The brothers' reunion was only possible because his father, his adoptive father, had business to tend to in the east. Dragon never said it, but Sabo knew he was meeting someone. For what purpose, however, Sabo could only speculate. It can't be about weapons, Koala suddenly said. She too had an inkling that Dragon came to the east to meet someone and knew that Sabo was likely trying to piece together what the purpose of the meeting could be. And it's certainly not an informant. Traveling here all the way from the end of paradise? In person no less? Koala shook her head. The risk was too great, far too many things could go wrong. To be honest, I haven't the faintest idea either. Sabo confessed with frustration etched on his face clear as day. Nothing worth the risk comes to mind, especially since that one is around these waters. There was a very large threat looming around the east as well. Dragon was powerful, dare Sabo says, even stronger than Garp and powerful enough to cost Luffy an arm even if the Wolfman went all out. Unfortunately, the person lurking around is not only a powerhouse as well, but a genius in battle as well. Of all the times to come to the east, now is definitely the fucking worst. Sabo and Koala both shared this sentiment as the agreed-upon island was becoming ever closer. You think your brother could beat, not without awakening completely. Sabo was loath to admit it, but unless the full powers of Luffy's devil fruit were active, the Wolfman stood little chance against that one. Both of them have devil fruits that have the power to destroy the world. I'd say that one's devil fruit has the upper hand against Luffy's though. Koala nodded in agreement before replying, I'm not surprised. Both of them originated from myths, but it's a battle between a beast and a goddess. Your brother's beast may be a god killer, but I wouldn't pit it against that goddess and expect it to win. Koala and Sabo both disembarked their ship and landed on the sandy beach with a thud. The beast could definitely win, but the odds would certainly be stacked against it. Sabo sighed before deciding to change the topic. This subject was basically done and destined to become circulatory anyway, and the idea that someone could actually toy with his brother was unsettling. Gramps did us one hell of a favor. The blonde smirked as his grandfather had gone and abused his power and reputation yet again to make sure the majority of Marines in the area would be partying instead of keeping watch. It's great that Sengoku wouldn't really think it's strange that Gramps would pull something like that. It isn't exactly something to boast about either. Koala's giggling elevated Sabo's own spirits. A happy, cheerful Koala is the only Koala Sabo wants to see. The blonde stretched as he and his companion made their way to the center of the island. Supposedly there was a clearing in the forest with a large central tree that was home to thousands of fireflies. It was also where Dragon met up with whoever was important enough to risk coming here. Koala gasped as the pair made it into the clearing. It was breathtaking. Nature at its finest. The grass was green and vibrant, the night sky clear and generous in showing the treasures it held. The massive tree was full of life as well, and swayed with the cool winds. Sabo wasn't a romantic, but even he could tell that was the atmosphere this jewel of nature was meant to exude. Seeing how Koala's state of emotions were, Sabo knew he was on the money. But while Koala was entranced, he wanted to know why Dragon had met the VIP here. Was it a lover? The notion was ludicrous. Not only was it stupid to risk so much for such a trivial matter, this was freaking Monkey D. Dragon. The guy's love was work and his dream. Where the heck would he even meet someone to date? I guess he did have Luffy, so he clearly had someone in the past. Did this mean Luffy was gonna have a stepmom? Well, it would be more like he was getting the stepmom considering how Luffy viewed Dragon. Sabo grimaced as he recalled the way Luffy adamantly refused to acknowledge Dragon as his father when the two had first met. Lou's relationship with Dragon has definitely become better, but it's certainly not familial. Koala slowly began going down the same thought train Sabo was and now sported a confused expression. Their confusion only heightened when they realized something. Someone was humming. The voice was unforgettable to the two by now, but there was no way it was possible. Sabo and Koala shared looks showing just how absurd the idea seemed before they made their way to the other side of the tree, and found exactly what they thought wasn't possible. Dragon was humming, like a man who'd just come home from a date. Close your mouths. You'll end up catching flies if you don't. Dragon smirked as the sound of dropped jaws snapped back up. He had yet to open his eyes, and that was intentional. He wanted to keep the memory of her still fresh, and he knew once he opened his eyes again, that memory, that image would begin to fade. You must be wondering why I'm in such a good mood. You must have also figured out that this isn't exactly my scene, to put it lightly. Understatement of the century. Sabo deadpanned with crossed arms and a disapproving expression etched on his features. You came all the way to the east for a date? Dragon wasn't even annoyed with his right-hand man's tone, he just laughed heartily, like the other men of the Monkey D family. Heavens no, my boy. Dragon smirked, knowing Sabo's impatience was beginning to show. Koala was no different if the disappointed sounds she was making was anything to go by. Well, it wasn't a date, but we did flirt around. Not what I wanted to hear, old man. Sabo wasn't interested in the slightest about his adoptive father's love life. Even Koala didn't seem that interested. Goes to show just how absurd the notion of Dragon having a love life was. Who'd you meet and why? My wife. She gave me some information on the movements of the Celestials as well as what the Marines are. Wife? Dragon's explanation was cut short as both Sabo and Koala screamed the word that took a bit of time to register in their heads. You're married? Now, Dragon opened his eyes and blinked at the two blankly before frowning. What, you thought Luffy was born out of wedlock? Wait a minute. Koala was trembling as the rather blunt message Dragon was unraveling in her mind. Like most things though, it became clearer to Sabo sooner than it did for her. She's alive. Sabo had gone his whole life since he met Luffy thinking his little brother's birth mother was dead. Hell, even Luffy said so. The guy believed his biological mother died giving birth to him. Dragon was unaware of this fact and just gave Sabo a dull look. Yes, she is alive and well, she is a. Silence met Dragon's declaration with both Sabo and Koala completely dumbfounded with what they just heard. Wait, so Luffy's a. Dragon opened his mouth to respond to their yelling before his eyes popped wide open as he realized he fucked up. Ah, forgot I wasn't supposed to mention that. Silence. Let's forget about that little tidbit, shall we? Are you freaking kidding me, old man? Sabo exploded with shark teeth while Koala just contemplated her life so far. It's Garp's blood, I swear. Dragon was leaps and bounds more intelligent than his father, but the man's blood still ran through his veins. Monkey D blood ran through his veins. Slip-ups like these were unfortunately inevitable. Dragon just thanked his lucky stars slip-ups like these were few and very, very far between. Zoro groans, scrunching up his face before stretching with a soundless yawn. The swordsman smacked his lips as he blinked away the remaining vestiges of slumber. It isn't long before the smell of breakfast reaches his nostrils, and with a happy smile Zoro gets up, and immediately regrets it as he leans against the tree for support. Okay. Definitely drank a lot more than I realized last night. The swordsman was suddenly assaulted by a wave of nausea, but since this was a very common occurrence it didn't take long for the swordsman to regain his bearings. With a huff, Zoro left Usopp and Sanji, who'd gotten himself out of the tree at some point in the night, to continue sleeping. Zoro had a laugh, or at least tried to, when he saw Sanji still had the gift he and Usopp gave him last night, but the hangover was being a bitch. Please let there be bacon. The swordsman's wish was answered as lo and behold, Steve the bartender was working the stove. The riot leader glanced behind him to check who'd entered and grinned when it turned out to be Zoro. Come to claim your plunder, blood of Bacchus? The man's jest caused Zoro to pause in his stride. Coming to claim plunder was probably a joke based on him being a pirate, but blood of Bacchus? Who the heck was Bacchus? Without turning back to Zoro, Steve gestured to the side of the bar where a pretty large sack rested. You've bankrupted the whole village after that display last night. Never thought a guy could drink so much in my life. Ha ha ha. Laughing heartily, Steve plated up a serving of scrambled eggs, toast, and bacon. Here, this one's on the house. All questions about who Bacchus was disappeared as the mouthwatering scent of the humble breakfast reached his sinuses. Sanji was a great cook, even if Zoro would likely never voice it, but something about simple bar food just hit different. It wasn't long before Zoro was scarfing down the modest meal with such gusto that no words were needed for Steve to preen smugly. As the swordsman waited for his second helping, he decided to check just how much he racked up last night. Probably enough for holy shit. Steve burst out jovially yet again as Zoro practically fell off his seat seeing just how much he scored. There must be 57,000 belly in here. How much did I drink? While the swordsman had his moment, Steve looked towards the bar's entrance where the leader of the village saviors made his entrance. What he saw caused him to become significantly paler. Luffy was covered in scratches and, are those bite marks? What the heck could pull off something like that to a monster like him? Luffy, what the bloody hell happened to ya lad? Steve's scream caused Zoro to turn to his captain, right as a breeze passed by. There was silence, and then there was disgust. Oh God above, you reek of a brothel, man. The unexpected declaration knocked Steve into a stupor. Brothel? Why on earth would Zoro be talking about oh. Now recognizing the damage on Luffy, Steve just gave him the look. You know the one. The one every dirty uncle gave their nephews knowing it would be cause of uncomfortable embarrassment. So, they're gonna be a little orange blur running around by next year? Unless you can get pregnant orally. No, the smug delivery of the wolfman's retort stumped Steve for a moment before the bartender just erupted in laughter as Zoro screamed for the wolfman to not go into further detail. How do you know what a brothel smells like anyway? Luffy questioned after thanking Steve for the complimentary breakfast. One of my targets was a man who worked in one. Zoro shivered as he recalled the memory. The swordsman had no problem with gay people, but that guy was just the epitome of just no, one mark that I can definitely say wasn't worth the trouble. Luffy was silent for a moment before asking, so you've never, you know? Zoro gave his captain a, are you stupid? Look, and risk not being able to achieve my dreams because of contracting something for being Sanji? No thanks. Steve snorted in amusement while Luffy just shook his head with a chuckle. Deep down both Zoro and Luffy knew the cook would never have participated in such affairs. Despite his obsession with Melorines, unless the end goal was marriage, Sanji wouldn't take it past exaggerated flirting. Didn't mean they weren't going to take jabs at the cook for his antics though. So you and Nami finally tied the knot? Zoro's rhetorical question was responded with a hum of confirmation. Luffy wasn't really in the mood to talk for two reasons. The first being the incredible breakfast and the second being the 2-hour-long screaming he had to endure from the buttered mutt he had inside. Want another 2 hours, you little shit? Ain't nothing about me, that's little. Surprised you already forgot Nami's. Ah, no. Bad. I get it. Just shut up already. Luffy frowned as the wolf began whimpering as if he was living a horrible nightmare. On one hand the captain felt somewhat guilty that the poor pooch had to listen through all that, on the other hand the memories of how he broke his mate fed his ego far too much to really care. Steve just gave Zoro a look, silently asking why Luffy was making so many different expressions and staring intently at the wall. The swordsman just smirked and swirled his finger at the side of his head thinking Luffy was too caught up with the wolf to notice. He wasn't. Usopp and Sanji just stared at Zoro whose face was covered in grease, and bits of what Sanji assumed was bacon. Nice makeup, Marimo. Women might have some interest in you now. Sanji smiled smugly, lighting up his cigarette calmly, still unaware of what his fellow crewmates had done. The archer and swordsman struggled to keep their blank expressions so as to not give away that anything was wrong. That all went for naught as soon as Luffy exited the bar and saw Sanji. Luffy was frozen still, unsure of what to say. Guess he swung that way after all. The misunderstanding dissipated as quickly as it came once Luffy noticed Zoro and Usopp practically dying trying to hold in their laughter. Getting annoyed with Marimo and Long Nose, Sanji looked to his captain for answers. The wolfman shook his head with a sigh before pointing to the glass window of the bar where Sanji promptly moved towards, freezing on the spot when he finally found out what the two idiots rolling on the ground, essentially soiling themselves as they laughed their asses off. There were some lines you just didn't cross. Putting the heaviest, over-the-top, cringy Okama makeup. That was pretty up there, especially for someone like Sanji. The village, who'd been blissfully asleep, collectively woke up in fight-or-flight mode as Sanji chased down the two perpetrators who gave the cook the least sincere apologies Luffy had ever heard, and he grew up with Ace. Eventually the chase had ended and the crew was preparing to set sail once again, well mainly Luffy and Zoro were preparing the ship to set sail. With the rush of adrenaline, and influence of alcohol completely removed from their systems both Sanji and Usopp had their blessings take full effect. Which means they could now smell what Zoro had to deal with all throughout breakfast. So strong was the scent that, after congratulating the captain, Usopp immediately locked himself into his workshop, stating the room and the area around it was to be a Luffy-free zone. At first the wolfman just shrugged it off with a laugh but it didn't take long to realize the archer hadn't been kidding. Luffy made a mental note to not get on Nami's bad side once that project was finished. Zoro didn't say anything, he just stared at the aftermath. Luffy glared at his vice captain before huffing and marching off to take another shower in hopes the scent would finally piss off. It did not. How'd you manage to get Luffy to look like a hedgehog? Zoro genuinely wondered how the marksman had pulled that one off. He did not however want the explanation to include being tested on as well. Unfortunately for the marksman, Zoro wasn't as kind as Luffy to being electrocuted. Walking out the tinkerer's workshop charred black and spiky-haired, Zoro slammed the door where behind lay the crumpled form of Usopp in a very similar if not worse state. Sanji, who'd decided to cook something for the newlyweds, just stood by the kitchen door watching Zoro who stared back. The only noise to break the silence between the two was the kitchen door creaking as Sanji closed it ever so slowly. Coward. What was that, you shitty swordsman? From the village, Luffy's sweat dropped as the clash between cook and swordsman got loud enough for even the villagers to hear it. The villagers had insisted on stocking the crew's supplies back up to full which was why Steve stood by Genzo's side holding a crate of venison meat. The last crate to be brought on board actually. They're certainly a lively bunch, aren't they? How can they even move right now? I know, right? My head's still pounding from the party last night and those two are already at each other's throats like hangovers don't exist. Well they do have the wolf's blessing. Luffy replied mentally before a thought came to mind. Wait, does the blessing even do that? Technically yes, but from what I understand, as it is right now, it's simply a glorified 24/7 adrenaline shot. From what you gather, it's your blessing isn't it? Accepting the crate from Steve with a thankful nod, Luffy mentally interrogated the wolf within. It isn't exactly heard of for a devil fruit to only partially awaken, pup. The wolf snapped back causing Luffy to frown as he ascended the steps to the Going Merry. I knew the blessing would affect their stamina and senses as that's the bare minimum it's capable of doing but it's more unique gifts. I cannot say for certain they will manifest until I fully awaken. Whoa, gifts. What gifts? This was new information and it wasn't something Luffy was exactly thrilled to hear. Once given, the blessing cannot be taken away except through death and the wolfman knew a certain swordsman had a distaste for acquiring powers not by his own strength. The wolf knew this and Luffy could feel the exasperation and eye rolls he was getting. Your vice captain won't have much to complain considering how the unique gifts are given and that's under the assumption he even manages to get one. Luffy absent-mindedly went through the motions of readying the ship for setting sail as he waited for the wolf to continue. Like all things in life, everything worth something, costs something. Zoro won't trigger a unique gift to be bestowed unto him unless he does something that would warrant it. A sacrifice of equal or greater value. What kind of sacrifice? Your vice captain, and crew in general, all have their own dreams they aspire to see come to fruition. Unless they plan to set those aside and lay down their lives for you or their fellow crewmates, a gift won't be given. Luffy frowned deeply at the thought as he pieced the rest together himself. It was a case of loyalty being the most important element, the core element, of a being in a pack. He and his crew were wolves, and when a pack member shows their loyalty through unbelievable feats, they are rewarded and acknowledged by the Alpha. That was how the blessing worked, it seemed. Don't see how that stops Zoro from getting a power or ability he didn't work for. Luffy's comment was answered with a tired sigh. The wolf was shaking his head disappointedly. Sometimes his host was the sharpest tool in the box, other times he was the dullest. Unless Zoro or anyone else plans on giving up their dream, they won't be getting a unique ability. They'll only be given a radar of sorts that gives them an idea of where their packmates are, as well as thought communication, telepathy, when you finally fully awaken me. And you're only saying this now because this information, while admittedly very beneficial later down the line, was something Luffy would have liked knowing about sooner. What? I never asked. The silence that greeted him spoke volumes. With a heavy sigh, Luffy made a mental note to sit down and talk to the wolf about whatever else he'd failed to inquire about. Zoro approached Luffy, still sporting spiky hair that was, "Is your hair sparking? What's taking Nami so long?" The swordsman completely disregarded his captain's question as another spark of static sizzled from between the spikes in his hair. "Don't know, but we're leaving now." Luffy took a quick glance at the sky, squinting as he was blinded by the sun's rays before removing the rope that tied the ship to the docks. While sporting a confused look, Zoro followed his captain's lead and raised the anchor. Nami explicitly said to get the ship moving by this time and that she'd get here no problem. "Not worried about your wife having second thoughts, Captain?" Zoro smirked as Luffy just rolled his eyes with a chuckle. "If I did, I never must have had much faith in her to begin with." The swordsman smirked at his captain's confidence, and the smirk only widened as the witch herself finally made her appearance on the opposite end of the village. "Looks like she's finished wrapping things up." Nami took a deep breath as the villagers finally took notice of her. She watched each and every one of them intently, ingraining each and every one of them in her memories once more. Her eyes lingering on Genzo, and her resolve wavered briefly before she steeled herself once more. The village was in a state of confusion. The pirates were leaving, yet Nami wasn't on the ship. Wasn't she the navigator? Wasn't she romantically involved with the captain? Did she change her mind? Was she staying? Questions like those floated around the villagers, but then, like a bat out of hell, Nami ran towards them faster than they thought possible. The nimble woman weaved through the crowd like a serpent slithering through the undergrowth. In the blink of an eye she had gone from one edge to the other, and she was still running. The villagers' confusion came to an abrupt end as they realized Nami was leaving without saying goodbye. Wait. Nami, don't just leave like that, Nami. Hey, come back. Nami didn't come back, she didn't even turn back. She jumped off the port right as waves crashed against the rocks and she landed on the Going Merry. The navigator turned to her village, her home, and put on a cheeky smile as she brought out a few going-away presents. Hang on a minute, isn't that? The cat burglar had struck again as she proudly displayed her plunder to her victims. Wallets, purses, even old fisherman George's necklace pouch were in her possession. The villagers, in a fit of anger and disbelief, came to a collective consensus. "You cheeky little thief." As the woman who would be queen reveled in her victims' cries of outrage, her family had zero hesitation in voicing or showing their opinions on her actions. Good grief, Zoro shook his head with a smile while thanking his lucky stars that he'd hidden his score the moment he'd gotten on board. Sanji was, well, he was Sanji. "Aw, how beautifully done, Nami Swan." Usopp peeked his head out of his workshop and gave Nami a thumbs up. The gesture would have been more appreciated had the marksman not pinched his nose with laundry clips. "Well, no take-backs now, Luffy. You still sure you made the right choice?" Without a shred of doubt, Luffy mentally responded as he placed his arm around his wife's waist and the two waved goodbye to her village. The villagers, crying and screaming their support for their little fireball to go and achieve her dreams, to go and make the world a smaller place, to make them all, to make Belmere proud. Nami's gaze lingered on Genzo, and the old sheriff, misunderstanding the look, just gave her a bright smile and raised one of his dearly departed friend's favorite beers. The navigator was laughing and crying as she waved even harder, knowing that after this she won't be seeing her father anytime soon. "You all right, love?" Luffy asked as he brushed off one of the tears streaking down his mate's face. Nami just took a deep breath and nodded as she turned away from He Village and faced her family, her two older brother figures giving her supportive smiles, her cheeky younger brother grinning by the wheel, ready to adjust course, and of course by her side, Luffy, her husband, her alpha, who gazed down on her with those beautiful golden eyes. "So, where to next, my queen?" Nami wiped the tears off her face one last time before plastering a wide shit-eating grin on her face. "Set course for Logue Town. And after we're done there, the Grand Line." Logue Town, The legend begins there were two things that got Luffy's attention the moment he left the Land of Dreams. The first was the smell of oranges. That was the pleasant fragrance that greeted Luffy as he woke up from his peaceful slumber. The other was the companion's warmth by his side. Nami was quiet and serene as she lay next to her husband, shifting slightly, burying herself closer to him as the wolfman toyed with her hair, smiling contentedly all the while. A glance outside revealed that the sun had just begun to peek over the horizon. Luffy sighed happily as he continued messing with his queen's hair, smirking when his Nami started shifting in her sleep with that smile she got every time money came in like loads. His contentment dimmed however as his thoughts drifted towards the future, to when they had all achieved that which they set out to sea for. In a sense he was damning all those who have yet to join his crew, the next Pirate King's crew. They all knew what they were getting themselves into for the immediate present, but Luffy doubted they really gave much thought to what comes after. And even after Dragon accomplishes his ambitions, there will still be a target on all our backs. It wasn't just Luffy who would have to live with watching his back till the end of his days. It didn't even end with those who joined him on his journey to the throne. It would be their kids, their descendants as well. Luffy sighed heavily as the inevitability of it all weighed in him again. No one who joined his crew thus far showed any signs of not settling down when the journey came to an end, and that includes Zoro. Luffy smirked as his iron-willed vice captain came to mind. The man was driven and razor-focused. Settling down would be the last thing on his to-do list, but it was there on the list nonetheless. Despite the drive he shows in his training, Luffy knows his vice captain still sought companionship, and had things gone differently he might have already had someone special to him that way Nami was to Luffy. No, he did have someone. Luffy still did not know her name, and while the lapses in Zoro's focus were few and far between, they were there. Gazing longingly off in the distance to where Luffy assumed she was laid to rest, tending to his cherished blade, the blade that was originally hers to inherit, Wado Ichimonji, with both care and regret. Luffy had even passed by Zoro mumbling to himself, as if he were talking to her. Luffy never caught her name, and frankly he wasn't particularly curious about knowing it either. Losing someone you love, that was one fear he carried no matter how strong he had become. The fact that something so commonly feared still haunted him made it all the more terrifying to him. The aftermath of it all, he'd seen it all play out before him. He saw the cold bitterness, the overwhelming darkness, and the sheer lifelessness it induced in a person. Ace. Memories of how the eldest of the three brothers were thrust through him. The memories of Ace confiding in him felt like nails being hammered deep into his heart. Without much thought, Luffy turned to the blade Mihawk brought him back when the two had met on the Baratie. The blade brought up more unpleasant memories. How much longer will you continue to deny the truth? Ace was born alone. His father's legacy made sure of that. Even if Ace himself had no relation to his father's acts, to the people of the world just being of that man's blood was enough. He lived his whole life under the shadow of his father's legends, and even when Garp brought him to Dayton, Ace was still isolated. The worst part of it all was that even to this day Ace sees himself as isolated, alone. Ace surrounded himself with people he can laugh with and sees as family, but that was the problem, wasn't it? To him, family was just a group of people only a step away from the door. People he expects to walk out on him, abandon him, just like his parents. Ace loved his mother, he truly did, but she wasn't spared from his wrath. Between the two, Ace despised his blood father more, but his hate for his mother was there nonetheless. Frankly, even Sabo and I are seen that way. Luffy knew that even after all they'd been through, Ace still expected deep down that Sabo and he may eventually leave him. Ace probably didn't believe it was inevitable when it came to Luffy and Sabo, but the belief of possibility still lived inside his dark, twisted heart. Since joining Whitebeard, Ace had certainly seemed to have gotten better, but with Teach's betrayal. Luffy sighed, more tired than he had been before sleeping. When will you stop running, Ace? Usopp stretched out his body with a satisfied smile. Nami's specialized one-of-a-kind weapon was coming together nicely. The marksman leaned back in his chair, smirking as memories depicting the journey it took to get here played back in his mind. The project was certainly a challenging one, to the point where Usopp couldn't find it in himself to brag that he'd done the majority of the work. Nami's knowledge and natural affinity with the weather was the only thing that actually made this crazy thingamajig possible. Not to mention absurdly powerful. The fact that it managed to cause Luffy to flinch said it all honestly. That coupled with the fact that this is still a prototype. Usopp shuddered to think what Nami would be capable of doing when she held a fully operational one in her hand. One thing was for sure, the aftermath of her battles would be catastrophic. Unfortunately, I can't make the actual one till I get new materials. Usopp frowned unhappily as he picked up the weapon, the Klimatact as he and Namo dubbed it, and twirled it around. In all honesty, the prototype itself would only be able to last 3 or 4 maximum power shots before it broke, and that was under the assumption it wouldn't self-implode. And it had a high chance of self-imploding. The tinkerer of the straw hats shivered as he recalled the close call with the previous prototype. A second later and the Mary would have had a good chunk of its hull blown apart. Kaya would probably have a laugh about his clumsiness, but that wasn't exactly the kind of story he wanted to bring back. On the subject of important people to me, the marksman placed the prototype down on his work desk gently, before pulling back the drawer underneath. The blueprints his father requested Mihawk bring to him inside. Taking the prints out, Usopp studied the schematic for he wasn't particularly sure what category it fell into. Considering its wide versatility, the device would definitely be classified as a tool, but the sheer firepower it could deal with also made it seem more like a weapon. The device was, in the simplest way, a slingshot attached to a gauntlet. When Usopp had the materials he planned on building it immediately, he even had a few tweaks in mind on how to make it more, well, his style. Of course, this was if he had the funds to buy the materials for it. Luffy and Nami had agreed that after every haul made, while a large amount of it would still go to the crew's shared funds, whoever contributed to its acquisition would also be given a personal slice of the pie. Based on their performance, of course. Sadly, Usopp's performance against Jin back on the Baratie was absolute piss, and while he did get some gold from the Arlong Pirates battle, most of the gold was left for the village. With a heavy sigh, Usopp resigned himself to the fact that the construction of the slingshot gauntlet would have to be put on hold for a while longer. The marksman supposed he could ask the lovely, understandable navigator for extra allowance. Usopp could feel his soul already leaving his body for the afterlife just thinking about how that talk would go. While there was always a chance, Usopp's fear of Nami won out in the end and the marksman let out a defeated sigh before a battle could even begin. Well, a massacre really. Sanji would likely join in and even half-heartedly the blonde could deliver one hell of a kick. Speaking of the woman who will be queen, Usopp was knocked out of his brooding when her screams echoed through the walls. Rushing, and stumbling along the way, Usopp ran out of his workshop and headed towards the back deck. On the way, he was joined by Sanji who looked downright murderous at the moment. The man's dedication to protecting women may be overkill but in situations like this, Usopp wasn't going to complain. The two arrived on the back deck, tense and on high alert, ready for battle, only to find Nami glaring at Zoro disapprovingly and Luffy reading the daily paper with a blank expression. The vice captain was smirking arrogantly, ignoring the glare Nami was sending his way. That didn't sit well with Sanji who, while relieved that Nami was safe, moved to start having another skirmish with the swordsman. The score was currently 0 wins, 0 losses, 71 draws. Relaxing, Usopp decides to ask Nami why she screamed for everyone. There isn't any danger so why'd you call for us all to be here? She was technically only calling for you and Dartbrow. Zoro casually struck up a conversation with Usopp as he and Sanji traded blows, armament-coated kicks against armament-coated blades. Luffy and I were already here, and we saw our bounties. Oh, was that it? Bone? Wait a minute. We got our bounties. Usopp was about to walk back to his workshop only to snap right back to Zoro who held one bamboo shoot against Sanji's neck while the cook had his right foot hovering over the swordsman's head. All of us. Zoro gave Usopp a brief pitying smile before smirking at Sanji tauntingly. Only Luffy and I actually, and if we disregard Luffy's initial bounty, I have the highest bounty ever given to anyone in the East Blue. 30 million Barris. While Sanji sulked and cursed Zoro who just continued taunting him, Usopp turned to Nami with a confused expression. Wait, why are you mad at him? Getting a bounty is a huge incentive for more powerful enemies to come and take a shot at us. Nami was well aware that a high bounty meant more fame and glory but it also meant that whoever did not give them the time of day in the past may now have gotten an interest in them now. I am proud and happy for Zoro and Luffy, Usopp but this just adds more problems than it solves. While there was definitely nothing that could pose a threat to the monster trio, Nami and Usopp would be easy targets just ripe for the picking. They may not have had bounties of their own, but whoever snagged the photos of Luffy and Zoro had caught glimpses of the rest of the Straw Hats as well. Sanji, Usopp, and Nami were all too blurry to be instantly identifiable but their more unique characteristics were shown. Usopp's nose, Sanji's swirly eyebrows and, well, orange hair wasn't exactly common. It will be fine, love. Luffy was openly smirking, evidently amused by something but Nami was too caught up in her worries to notice. Perhaps instead of freaking out immediately upon seeing the bounties you should have read the article about us as well. Handing the newspaper back to Nami, the navigator flipped to the page with the article her captain seemed particularly pleased about. In the process, 2 bounties slipped out and Usopp's jaw dropped when his eyes landed on Luffy's. That was Luffy's first initial bounty. What the actual? The 7th of July 75 million Barris. How? WY? The marksman was left dumbfounded and lost, his jaw resting on the floorboards as his eye twitched. The bounty's actual value was enough to even shock Sanji, who ended up tripping and face-planting into the deck with a loud thud. Seeing as he was battling Zoro, the swordsman was put in an awkward position when he had to adjust his trajectory mid-swing so he didn't end up killing the damn cook. That kind of bounty shouldn't be possible for anyone in the East, shouldn't it? Especially as their first one. It's because of Mihawk. Nami cut in with a frown as the article brought up the brief exchange between Mihawk and Luffy. The other accomplishments and feats such as the disposal of the Krieg pirates, exposure of Captain Morgan, and the elimination of Arlong were all also mentioned but the main reason for his absurdly high initial bounty was because of the skirmish with Mihawk. Considering the fact that Mihawk is regarded as the greatest swordsman in the world, and the rival of the Emperor of the Sea, red-haired Shanks, Luffy being able to actually stand up to him is the government's excuse for this absurdly high bounty in the East. Usopp opened his mouth to question something but having guessed what it was Luffy decided to explain while Nami continued reading the article. The best part and the greatest reason for his amusement was at the end of the article. The Marines likely wanted to give me a much higher bounty, around 500 million Barris. Luffy chuckled watching Usopp losing his marbles. But to have a pirate like that roaming the blues, Sengoku feared I'd become a beacon, a guiding light for other pirates to flock towards. Weak as they were, Krieg's fleet still posed problems just from the sheer number of them. Imagine if there was actually a competent captain leading them. The marksman shuddered from the images his mind cooked up. From the perspective of a civilian or even an average marine, that would certainly be a force to fear. Hundreds upon hundreds of pirates under Luffy's command, training in ways and methods that made it possible to face off against fishmen, dear God. Usopp could see why that would make them give Luffy a significantly lower bounty. Though 75 million berry was definitely still a mind-boggling price, it wouldn't be that ludicrous in the grand line. From her spot behind Luffy, Nami froze and her eyes widened in disbelief. Holy shit, the article had already left Nami in a bit of a stupor since the beginning. Why? Because unlike all other articles about pirates, they were placed in a positive light. They were still labeled as and thus to be treated like all other pirates by the Marines, but it was like they were made out to be heroes. No, not heroes. Vigilantes. They went around helping and saving people, but they weren't saints who did it for free or by the book. They had their own rules, their own moral compass. They aren't the first kinds of pirates to be showcased in that light though. The government itself had long devised a system of making use of such pirates. Currently 7 roamed the Grand Line, and it looked like they were about to be the 8th. Were you a candidate for? Luffy sported a shit-eating grin as he watched his wife's brain figuratively overload as the information she was reading just did not seem to compute. With an amused snort, Luffy turned to the rest of his crew who were curious as to why Nami was left in such a state. I have become a candidate for taking the position of the 8th Warlord of the Sea. EHHHHHH. A hooded figure grit his teeth as the Going Merry approached the docks. The hooded man laid in wait, hidden from the public by remaining in the dark alleys of Logatown. On the wall opposite of him, a hooded woman with long curly raven hair gazed upon the ship with desire in her eyes. The captain, Monkey D. Luffy being the object of her lust. Oh, how I've waited for this moment. The woman bit her lip as Luffy's unruly hair swayed with the wind. The woman's lustful state was broken by the hooded man's sneer. Don't forget the plan, you crazy witch. Unlike the woman, the hooded man only gazed upon the wolfman with distaste and vengeance. I want Monkey D. Luffy terminated in the most flashy way possible, by the most flashy person there ever was. Me. The woman snorted in derision before her mood soured further as the thieving wench with orange hair came out and onto the deck. The hooded woman glared scathingly, seeing the little bitch wearing her Luffy's signature straw hat. We'll see how it goes, clown. You can try and rough him up, but in the end I will be getting what I want. The woman pushed herself off the wall and right up to the man's face. I always get what I want. With a condescending smirk, the woman stalked off after casting one more longing gaze towards the wolfman. The hooded man scowled and grumbled under his breath about how much more pretentious the woman had become ever since she's gotten her own devil fruit. Damn, tub of lard. The man's glare intensified as he made a promise. Mark my words, Monkey D. Luffy, for what you did to my crew, only a flashy execution will await you. Walking back into the alley without ever turning back, the hooded man did not notice the fact that the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates was looking right where he and the woman had their conversation. I trust you two realize who's roaming about. Zoro and Nami both nodded in confirmation while Usopp and Sanji just looked lost. They could all feel malicious intent, but they hadn't expected the first 3 members of the crew had already been acquainted. Quote. Are you all interested in a little game? Groans of exasperation came out of the Straw Hats as they all recognized the look in Luffy's eyes. Another day of Luffy being an asshole for the heck of it with them being dragged into the madness was inevitable, it seemed. Following up the groans with resigned sighs, the crew collectively asked, how may we serve you today, Captain? Quote. You could at least act excited about it. Babe, with all due respect, whatever you have planned is probably going to be just plain mean. Nami's deadpan was accompanied by the hums and nods of approval by the other crew members, much to Luffy's dismay. It's not that they don't deserve an ass-whooping, but whatever you're planning likely leans more towards overwhelming humiliation. No, Luffy's protest began with gusto, but the disbelieving looks made it clear their minds were already set and, well, yeah. A man in his early 30s with snow-white hair and sharp brown eyes exhaled deeply as he stared down on the bounties that had been dispatched that very morning. Smoking 2 cigars at once, each and every exhalation resulted in making the man's room even denser with smoke. Any normal person would have had their lifespan decline had they put themselves in the same situation, but this was no normal man. He was Captain Smoker, wielder of the Moku Moku no Mi, a Logia-type devil fruit that allowed the user to turn their body into smoke. How did that stop Smoker from developing lung cancer? No one really knows, and the captain only cared enough about the revelation to continue his addiction to his heart's content. The loss of the danger factor killed a bit of the enjoyment in it, but Smoker carried on smoking regardless. The act was also meant to be a stress reliever, but given Smoker's current mood, it was evidently doing a piss-poor job of it. With a deep breath, Smoker's next exhalation momentarily shrouded him in a cloud of smoke. The Marine captain was annoyed. No, annoyed didn't cut it. He was livid, absolutely livid, and the reason was because of the man depicted in the substantially higher bounty of 75 million Barris. Monkey D. Luffy, the Straw Hat Wolf, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, and currently someone he, Smoker, had been explicitly stated to not engage under any circumstances. Now, Smoker was a prideful man, and for good reason. Since he was assigned to Logatown, no pirate who set foot in his sector ever made it out. The man was widely regarded and respected as someone who crushed pirate dreams before they could ever even really begin. Smoker was the relentless White Wolf, the Marine captain with a 100% successful capture rate, and he was just ordered by the Fleet Admiral of the Marines himself to stand down and let his perfect record go without even a fight. Clenching his fists in frustration, the wisps of smoke in the room seemed to become heavier and erratic in response to their master's mood. Smoker was a prideful man, but his pride could rot in hell for all he cared if it meant his subordinates' lives were assured safe. With another deep sigh, Smoker leaned back against his chair and massaged his temples tiredly. The smoke thinned and calmed as the Marine's anger slowed to a simmering burn rather than an all-encompassing flame. He would certainly be bitter and broody, and to all those who complain, well, tough shit. Just because he knew he was doing the right thing didn't change the fact that his reputation would be tarnished. My perfect record goes down the drain. Damn it. Garp. Your grandson is as much of a headache as a pirate as you were as an instructor. Recalling his days under Garp's tutelage left Smoker nursing old wounds that had healed long ago. Throbs of phantom pain resurfaced as the memories of how he'd gotten them flashed in his mind. God-forsaken hockey-coated cannonballs, I'm just thankful for the fact that Garp was absolute garbage when it came to swords. Thinking about swords, Smoker groaned and slammed his head onto his desk. Screw the headache I'll get when my reputation goes down the drain and the mocking of being afraid to even attempt capturing the Straw Hat Wolf. The real pain in the ass will be dealing with Tashigi. If Smoker knew his subordinate, and he knew her very well, that clumsy woman would not stand down and likely just go after the Straw Hats herself. She'll definitely go after the vice captain seeing as he supposedly has a graded sword. Smoker had just been muttering to himself but stopping to think about what he just uttered. Oh fuck. Checking the map by his office wall, the captain cursed as his fears were confirmed. The last known location of the Straw Hats was the Konami Islands a few days ago, and based on the winds they'd been having recently, the Straw Hats likely already arrived in Logatown for resupplying and fulfilling that tradition many pirates seeking to sail the Grand Line had. Of all days for Tashigi to be out and about. With a hard glare, Smoker threw on his custom captain's coat that remained open on the front, the kanji for justice, embroidered on its back, and a thick silver furline around the collar. Slinging his jeet with a seastone cap on as well, the Marine captain exited his office and passed on the order of Fleet Admiral Sengoku to his subordinates before further ordering them to keep an eye out for Tashigi. Having a clear idea of why their captain added the additional order, the Marines set out to find the chief petty officer before she did something stupid. Damn woman can't even walk a few steps without tripping over herself. Smoker cursed under his breath and immediately ran out to look for Tashigi. He could only hope he wasn't too late. He was. Zoro was speechless. He had been keeping an eye out in case that clown bastard showed his face again, but he wasn't prepared to run into a different ghost from his past. Having been more focused on the dark alleys and sketchy-looking parts of the town, Zoro wasn't paying much attention to his immediate surroundings, which is what led him to this situation. On his knees, handing a woman he'd bumped into, the glasses that had fallen off when they collided with each other. A woman who looked like the girl he knew all those years ago, exactly as she would have looked had death not claimed her from him that day. Kuina. Zoro couldn't stop himself from uttering his dearly departed friend's name as the dark blue-haired woman put on her red-rimmed glasses. The woman was of slim build with dark brown eyes. She wore a dark blue jacket with a white fur lining, a yellow button-up shirt with a floral design, light blue jeans, and light leather boots. Not hearing what Zoro said, the woman gave the swordsman a grateful smile before speaking. Thank you, kind sir. I apologize for the inconvenience. Have a bad habit of being clumsy. Dusting the dirt off herself, the woman and Zoro both returned to their full heights, the lady almost a head shorter than the vice captain. My name is Tashigi. Yours? Zoro didn't answer. He was left too entranced by the woman who was the spitting image of Kuina to really comprehend the fact that he was just staring at her dully. Frowning, the woman hesitated for a moment before snapping her fingers in Zoro's face. The rude act had knocked the strange green-haired man out of his stupor and allowed him to get his bearings again. I'm sorry, it's just that. Zoro found himself at a loss for words for a moment before he decided to just be truthful. Honestly, it wasn't like he was going to be seeing this woman again. Might as well just spit it out like it is. You look just like a friend of mine. She's not. I'm sorry for your loss. Understanding what the kind man was getting at, Tashigi could feel her heart clench. To lose someone precious to you, to grieve for them, to finally make your peace with their deaths, only to get back on that emotional train wreck by things you have no control over. Tashigi couldn't say she was speaking from experience, but she did have some idea of what the man was going through, and how he may act after this. You seem to be searching for something earlier. Maybe I can help you find it. Zoro wasn't particularly fond of the idea of walking around with a Kuina look-alike, but... well, if it makes things go faster, I can head over to the square that much quicker. Yeah. I'm looking for a sword shop, actually. Got any tips on where I could? You're a swordsman? The light that bloomed in Tashigi's eyes was so blinding and, well, so Kuina-like that Zoro actually found himself relaxing slightly. They looked the same, even kind of talked the same way, but in the end Tashigi was not Kuina. This realization was cemented after Tashigi's next words. I know a great place you can check out. I'm going there too, actually, so I can pick up my sword. Come on, Allah. It wasn't even 2 steps before Tashigi tripped and landed on the dirt again right in front of Zoro. Now if it was that gentleman wannabe, Arrow Cook Sanji in this position, Tashigi would have been bombarded with questions of concern and immediate help. Instead what she got was a man who snorted, tried to keep himself from laughing, gave up and just chuckled over her unfortunate disposition for clumsiness. At least he's smiling. Inwardly Tashigi was glad the green-haired man was a bit more lively, but on the surface, she gave him a pout with puffed-up cheeks and a glare. Jerk. Haha. Sorry, just wasn't expecting it. The apology would have been accepted had Zoro looked even remotely sincere, but based in the smug grin on his face, he was anything but sincere as he offered her his hand. With a huff and roll of her eyes, Tashigi accepted his help before socking him on the shoulder. Contrary to her expectations, Zoro wasn't affected in the slightest unless you counted his amusement getting higher. Pretty windy today, huh, Tashigi? Douche. Shoulder checking him with a smirk, Tashigi gestured for him to follow her lead. With a shake of his head, Zoro found himself talking with the brunette with mild interest. Tashigi certainly loved her blades, but she was more interested in the history behind them and their significance or importance to people, places, or even religions. While he was really mostly in it for being an actual swordsman, Zoro could respect Tashigi's way of seeing things as well. It took all his willpower later on to not actually reveal his name to her as she began ranting on and on about the evil devil known as Roronoa Zoro, who was rumored to have wielded one of the 21 great grade swords. In all honesty, Zoro was torn on how to feel about Tashigi's ranting. She certainly wasn't a fan of his and loathed the fact that he wielded the Wado Ikimonji, not that she knew the specific blade he had, but it was mostly because of the bad press he'd gotten from his ruthlessness as a bounty hunter. Tashigi confessed that she did acknowledge him as a great swordsman but just wished he used his prowess for more noble purposes rather than turning to piracy of all things. Boy was she in for a surprise later. Even the best fall down sometimes, Nami sang softly to herself as she continued browsing through the shops. The navigator had already gotten herself a few bags containing some clothes for the different climates as well as some for her nightly activities. Nami blushed slightly recalling the conversation she had with the rather, enthusiastic shopkeeper. Even the wrong words seemed to rhyme. Walking down the street, Nami kept an eye out for more cartography shops. Maps of the Grand Line weren't generally complete and some even just had individual islands on them without coordinates, but anything was better than nothing. There's also that log pose they kept talking about. Some of the previous shop owners she'd spoken with had brought up the log pose as an essential tool for traversing the Grand Line, but unfortunately none of them had any to sell. Nami's stride faltered when she noticed that a hooded man was staring at her from a few alleys ahead. At first she was expecting it to be the clown and so she prepared to go with plan D, however the event that took place just a moment later caused her to freeze immediately. To the normal people it may have just felt like the breeze picked up randomly, but to Nami it was so much more. That wasn't a breeze that just washed over them, it was hockey. Conqueror's hockey, and incredibly masterful control to go along with it. While every fiber of her being screamed for her to run, Nami remained where she stood. If whoever was under that mask was capable of controlling conquerors to that level had come for the crew. Well, she hoped Luffy forgave her for leaving ahead of him. Her resolve was unnecessary, however, as the man shifted slightly in order to reveal to her a rather distinctive tattoo on his left eye. Dragon. What in the world was he doing here? She knew he was roaming around in the east taking care of business, but to have ended up in Logatown at the same time as she and the others had. No. It was too convenient to be a coincidence. Dragon gave Nami an amused smirk, seeing the gears turning behind her eyes, before gesturing for her to follow him into the dark alleys. Nami remained where she stood for a few more moments before following Dragon into the shadows. To what do I owe this pleasure? Father-in-law, Nami asked with crossed arms as she leaned against the wall opposite of Dragon once the two had gotten out of sight. The most wanted man in the world looked like a boar who'd stumbled into a clearing of hunters for a moment before smiling wryly. He may loathe me, but if you're his type then perhaps we're more alike than we'd expected. Nami narrowed her eyes at that. First it was Garp who mentioned her being similar to Luffy's supposedly deceased, missing mother, and now it was Dragon himself making comparisons. Headstrong, next to no tolerance for bullshit, and violent tendencies. While Nami would have loved to smash the smug bastard's face into the wall, she doubted she could even scratch on him. Not to mention the fact that she'd be proving him right if she did attack him. Both you and Grandpa Garp have mentioned me being like Luffy's mother. I'm guessing she's alive and well after all? Ah yes, she is. Knowing what Nami was likely to bring up next, he decided to cut right to the quick. Luffy is to remain oblivious of her still being alive. Under no circumstances are you to reveal this information to him. Ever. Nami gave Dragon an incredulous look. And I would withhold information, lie to my husband because? Because while he deserves the truth, it is neither the time and place nor are you the person who should tell him. Dragon's glare was intimidating and often left anyone on the receiving end shivering in their boots. Nami was one of the rare exceptions who continued standing their ground. With a sigh, Dragon concluded that the only way to get Nami to agree was if she was privy to just who Luffy's mother was. Luffy's mother, her name is. What the fuck is he doing here? That subtle blast of Conqueror's hockey. Luffy knew of only one person capable of controlling their hockey to such an extent. Pushing his senses to the limit, Luffy glared as he picked up on just where his blood father was as well as who the bastard decided to meet. Luffy debated going over and getting Nami the hell out of there, but it seemed like she had things handled. Dragon can be an ass, but he won't touch my crew. Something wrong, my boy? An elderly man asked in concern as he placed the vintage bottle of whiskey back on the bar. The young man had given the old bartender the same impression Galdi. Roger had all those years ago in this very bar. To see him on edge right after he had poured him his drink, was that cursed marine who chased away all his customers close by. Sorry, I thought I heard something. Luffy turned back to the old bartender with a cheeky smile once more. To the eternal Pirate King. Reciprocating the young man's smile with his own, the bartender clinked his glass against Luffy's. Repeating the toast, to the eternal Pirate King. Placing their shot glasses down, the two turned their attention to the bar's entrance where a tall, well-built man with snow-white hair stood, smoking 2 cigars at once. While the bartender seemed to go into a panic, Luffy just grimaced at the smell. Thinking it was distaste for something else, the newcomer raised his arms up as he made his way down the steps, showing his desire to not enter conflict. Monkey D. Luffy, I presume, the man asked as he took a seat on the stool next to Luffy. The back of his jacket embroidered with the kanji for justice made it clear it was a marine, a captain, from the looks of it. Hit me with a shot of rum. The good stuff, please. At first the old bartender was going to refuse, but when Luffy asked that his glass also be reloaded, the old man just found himself working through the motions with practiced ease. Neither Luffy nor the Marine spoke to one another until after they both finished their drinks and ordered another reload. To what do I owe this pleasure, Captain? Smoker. The Marine captain finished for Luffy before downing his glass again, tapping it twice to signify he wanted another round to be poured. My subordinates and I, as well as any other non-vice admiral level Marine, have been ordered to not engage you in combat of any kind. The bartender found himself struggling to reclaim the bottle he'd ended up juggling in his hands only for it to fly towards the floor. Without missing a beat, Luffy casually swayed down to the side and grabbed the bottle before repouring his glass. Orders to not engage pirates. As that's so? Luffy asked rhetorically with clear amusement dawned on his face. So not only was he a candidate for becoming the 8th warlord, but he and his were essentially free from the Marines until the final stretches of Paradise, huh? Though that still begged the question. If you're not here to capture me, then what did you make your way down here for? One of my subordinates was out to run some errands and hasn't gotten the memo yet. Smoker suddenly seemed to age drastically, and Luffy had a feeling he knew what kind of subordinate the Marine captain was talking about. Unfortunately, she has a rather unhealthy obsession with your vice captain, Roronoa Zoro. Specifically the rumors regarding whether or not he has a great grade sword in his possession. Luffy chuckled as he responded, I'm sure my vice captain will be fine, Captain Smoker. He can handle. It's actually my subordinate I'm worried about. Luffy found himself wondering where he saw that eerily familiar look in Smoker's tired eyes. Then with utmost seriousness Smoker turned to Luffy. She can't walk 2 steps forward without tripping. To top it all off, instead of being logical about being outclassed, she'll probably challenge Roronoa to a duel regardless. Oh, that's why the look was familiar. It was the same look Daiden, Makino and even Sabo had on their faces whenever he or Ace did something reckless, for the 100th plus time. 90% of the looks were directed at Ace though, not him. Under the shade of a tree, a man with mid-length black hair, freckles and an orange cowboy hat sneezed loudly before glaring off to the east blue. Scratching his nose, Portgas Ace snorted derisively. That Luffy's talking shit about me again, isn't he? Sir, would you happen to be Fire Fist Ace? A waitress asked with concern as Ace stood up and stretched. Yeah, I am. Why? Ace pulled out some bills to pay for his meal, and a little extra for falling asleep on the table. Damn narcolepsy. There's a woman waiting for you outside. A Marine lieutenant commander. It probably would have been best if she just let Ace walk out completely unaware, but the man had livened up the place after those creeps following that fat ugly bastard with horrible teeth came over. Perhaps walking out the back would be. She wouldn't happen to be a short-haired redhead with a band-aid on her cheek, would she? The maid blinked. She is actually. Ace sighed and mentally prepared himself for the next lecture he was going to be getting. Maybe we could get a cup of coffee afterwards. Smoker wasn't sure what to say about the fight that was going on at the moment. Frankly, he wasn't even sure what kind of fight it was. Roronoa Zoro, you will surrender that blade. Tashigi cried out as she moved to attack Zoro again, clumsily. The woman was so open and unrefined in her attacks that Zoro found himself actually feeling like a bully for once. Face me like a real swordsman, damn it. A tick mark appeared over Zoro's temple as his patience for this shit ran out. If you want to be treated like a swordsman, then maybe you should actually learn to fight like one. I beg your pardon. Tashigi indignantly thrust her blade towards Zoro's face, which didn't twitch. You heard me, copycat. Flicking Tashigi's blade to the side, Zoro got in her face as he mocked her again. This girl was more infuriating than Kuina ever was. I am not your dearly departed friend. Tashigi growled through ground teeth as her forehead pressed against Roronoa before they both jumped back and entered another stance. Clearly, she's probably rolling in her grave crying because of your piss-poor swordsmanship. Tashigi took that as the last straw. For the rest of their strange fight, where they ended up being close enough to kiss each other if they ever wished to, Tashigi saw nothing but red. Excuse me. You take that back. A schoolyard fight between the admirable but ultimately weak class president versus the most muscle-brained delinquent on campus. Smoker was on the fence if it was that, or just the weirdest and dumbest quarrel between lovers he'd ever seen. The Marine captain had actually stood there for the past 10 minutes just trying to process what was happening before he just shook his head and decided to leave the lovebirds where they were. Straw had already said that some pirates would be running amok in the square, and after seeing Tashigi's current performance, Smoker was fairly certain she'd be better off here, sparring with Roronoa. I can't count how many times I was tempted to just scream, get a room. You bloody horndogs. For God's sakes, they could have started making out abruptly and it still would have been the same levels of strange. Bringing out his Den Mushi, Smoker reconfirmed the plan with his subordinates, minus Tashigi, as he made his way to the location Straw had requested he keep watch on. With a tired sigh, Smoker found himself on the edge of Logatown's town square, right next to a short-haired redhead with a rather familiar straw hat and, oh, a log pose. You're with Straw Hat, I assume. The woman didn't even flinch in surprise at his sudden question, or presence for that matter. Yeah, how can I? The woman froze when she saw who she was actually talking to, only to then give Smoker a pitying smile. You get dragged into my husband's madness as well. Smoker smirked. Evidently, Ms. Monkey D. Nami. The navigator of the Straw Hats raised an eyebrow with mild praise for Smoker not even missing a beat. You and Straw Hat weren't exactly subtle about being attracted to each other. Thinking back on it, yeah, they had pretty much just announced to the whole world they were engaged. Hee hee. Guess you got a point there. Where's Zoro? Having been reminded of the Straw Hat's vice captain, Smoker scratched his head in contemplation on just how to explain the strange relationship that was currently blossoming back on the main street. Roronoa is flirting. Flirting, huh? Yeah, that sounds a boo. Wait, what? Truthfully, Nami was just trying to make small talk to not only pass the time as she kept an eye on Luffy walking towards Roger's execution platform but get her mind off the enlightening conversation she had with Dragon earlier. However, the word flirting being applied to Zoro was too otherworldly for her not to do a double take. The hell do you mean flirting? Smoker chuckled a bit. Earlier the navigator had been hoping to get him to lose his cool and yet she was the one who ended up frazzled. Can't really say that's what it was for sure, but, well, Roronoa and Tashigi certainly looked like a married couple when I left them back there. Nami gaped at Smoker for a few moments before turning on her heel to go see the show with her own eyes. Screw her husband's crazy, douchebaggy schemes. This was the real content she wanted to watch. She wasn't even concerned about Luffy getting mopey over her not sticking around till the end. Why? Because she could see Luffy making hand signals asking for more details as he climbed the execution platform. Smoker, who recognized the gestures, could only sweat drop as he translated what Straw Hat was requesting. The next Pirate King was a gossip. Bloody brilliant. By the time the navigator left the square, Luffy had made his way to the top of the platform and thus, the show was about to begin. A guard who'd been put in charge of watching over the platform noticed Luffy's presence and immediately moved to reprimand him. This was not only Navy-owned property, it was considered a site of great historical importance as well. Oi you, get down from there. The guard scowled up at Luffy who turned to him with a blank expression. Didn't you hear me? I said, backquote, get down, you mongrel. Luffy just began rubbing his chin thoughtfully, closing his eyes in concentration. Nah. The sheer disrespect Luffy showed the guard had the man swearing like the man got hit where the sun didn't shine. Yo, watch your profanity, man. I see a toddler like 4 meters away. The man's swearing ceased, but it was not of his own accord. Like smashing a melon, a massive club came down on the guard's head, rattling the poor bastard's brain out of commission as he crumpled into the floor. I've been waiting for you, Luffy. The crowd around the platform who'd been drawn to the commotion initially moved to back away, but the males, well, they found themselves staring at what they believed had to be the most drop-dead gorgeous woman in the world. Long wavy hair that ended in curls, eyes that shined like a calm morning sky, alluring ruby red lips and a figure that even had some women questioning their sexuality. In the far back one man stood above all others in terms of deserving to go to horny jail. His name doesn't need to be said, you all know who it is. Oh, have you now? To what do I owe the displeasure of meeting such a twisted creature like yourself? Luffy kept his aloof, half-lidded gaze on the woman who was all looks of no substance, left gaping and sputtering incoherently as of all the responses she could have gotten a straight-up insult was not one of them. The crowd of apes who seemed to be thinking only with their hidden blades, roared in anger. Jeering at the insensitive and rude bastard that was Monkey D. Luffy, you may have changed on the outside, tub o' lard, but you're just as hideous as ever. Some of you may be wondering what kept the biggest simp for all women from attacking his captain and committing mutiny. The answer. A very strained marksman who kept repeating the truth of the drop-dead gorgeous woman's identity just so the blonde cook wouldn't go and try pulverizing their captain. Luffy wasn't exactly making his job easier as he continued to choose the most offensive and degrading ways of responding. You hurt me, Luffy. In a way no man ever has before. The woman still seemed to have not gotten the message through that brain of hers since she suddenly became bashful. So rough. So cruel of you to just leave me like that. The bastard did what? Ungrateful asshole. You dare hurt an elegant lady such as this. Shame on you. Luffy wasn't fazed in the slightest. Why would I ever want anything to do with an insidious monstrosity such as her? This wench wouldn't even be a decent fuck with how loose she is. From his spot by the largest road leading to the square, Smoker sweat dropped at how far Straw Hat was taking it. Garp, what the hell did you teach this kid? Man has a savagery that rivals that pretentious ass Akainu. I will ground him into the dirt. No woman, no matter the look, deserves such. For fuck's sake, Sanji. She killed families, civilians and even abused some animals. You still consider her human? The marksman heaved a sigh of relief when the cook finally stopped struggling against him. In all honesty, Usopp also thought Luffy was being too overly cruel, but remembering what that witch had done in the past, this was a piece of cake compared to what she put some families through. Even the children weren't spared. In the midst of all the jeering and frustration building in the crowd and the tub o' lard herself, Luffy calmly kept an ear open as he listened to the cowardly, dishonorable, pathetic excuse for a swordsman prepared to try taking him by surprise as well as the disappointing clown of a captain he followed. Without even turning back, Luffy raised his right hand and crushed the floating arm behind him while also delivering a left backswing, coated in armament, to not only block the cowardly Cabagee's blade but also incapacitate the man. The shards of the circus swordsman's blade embedded themselves into his chest after they'd been shattered by Luffy, and the infamous Buggy the Clown howled in pain as the bones in his detached arm were ground to dust. A failure as always, Buggy. The older pirate captain's appearance had the plaza going into a panic as the rest of the Buggy pirates burst into the scene, ensuring no one was leaving. I wouldn't be so sure of that, you cocky little shit. I, Buggy the Clown, am the flashiest man alive, and I will be the one to deliver the flashy blow to end your pathetic life. So angry, uncle, it was one pathetic scum beaten years ago. Beaten. You tore him to shreds, you satanic hellspawn. Ah, the return of angry white eyes and shark teeth. And it hasn't even been 2 months, you arrogant mutt. Oh, he was so pathetic it felt like I dealt with him when I was still barely able to crawl. Grinding his teeth with more tick marks than Luffy ever believed possible, Buggy did his explosion of limbs crap again, only this time. How do you like my improvements, boy? Luffy narrowed his eyes slightly at the spiked collars or belts Buggy had wrapped around his various detached body parts. It wasn't that they were a threat. It was just such a dumb idea to even bother implementing against him. Get skewered flashily, you little huh. Why aren't you dying flashily? Buggy cried out childishly as his various levitating body parts continued to back and then rush forward to pierce Luffy, only to bounce back with a metallic pong each time. Luffy's estimation of Buggy's intelligence hit rock bottom. This was the guy who sailed with his father as a co-apprentice on Gall D. Roger's ship. The fool didn't even consider the fact that Luffy could just coat various parts of his body in hockey to defend himself. The spikes weren't even that sharp. Luffy's coat remained unscathed as the assault continued as Buggy progressively continued to whine and rave about killing Luffy flashily, for he was the flashiest man there ever was. The shock the crowd had been in was promptly forgotten as even they began to wonder if the Captain Buggy Pirates was more circus clown than actual threat. They also began to wonder if this was just some really pathetic attempt at a comedic bit. Judging from the rude young man's expression though, well, he certainly wasn't part of it. Then, true to form, as the rude, unrefined man he showcased he was as he dealt with Tub Lard Alvida, Luffy raised his pinky finger and stuck it in his ear as he turned to the crowd, completely disregarding Buggy's existence. Anyone else have an annoying, pathetic, big-nosed, but ugly bug buzzing near their ear? The whole square erupted in laughter. Yeah, it was rude, but the quick reaction of Buggy exploding into a vibrant shade of red, too angry to even form coherent statements and just sputtering, was still worth a chuckle. It was all fun and games until Buggy pulled out a bomb though, and joke as you might, Buggy the Clown was most known for his stupidly powerful explosives. You all think this is funny. Let's see who's laughing when I detonate this baby and send this whole town to Kingdom Come. Does he not realize he'd be killed as well? Luffy wondered calmly as the people returned to panicking. Hell, even Smoker was sweating a bit. While the Marine captain would survive without much trouble, the civilians and his subordinates wouldn't. Luckily for Smoker, there was someone who shared his sentiments in protecting the common folk, smirking all the while as he waited for the perfect moment. Observe. The power that guarantees the Grand Line and the One Piece itself. Buggy lit the fuse on the bomb before tossing it high into the sky. Will be mine. The explosion that followed left everyone in Logatown trembling as what felt like an earthquake rumbled from above. Glass windows shattered and tempest winds sent a few of the lighter objects and even people flying. Whilst the civilians cowered in fear, a few Marines shaking in their boots as well, Luffy just whistled with mocking praise as he slowly clapped to Buggy's stupidity. If that kind of firepower was all it took to conquer the Grand Line, then I'm a celestial dragon. Fed up with the arrogance of the young pirate, Buggy pulled out another bomb, lit it, and threw it right towards Luffy, who put on a rather believable face of fear. Oh no, call a doctor. With a condescending smirk, Luffy turned to the crowd and spread his arms wide. But not for me, the next Pirate King. And as if the heavens themselves were on his side, a bolt of lightning flashed through the clear skies and struck the bomb, destroying it completely, before striking Buggy and basically burning the clown to a crisp. The crowd went wild, some cheered, some feared, but all were in awe. This was Monkey D. Luffy's global debut. Logatown may not have been where his journey started, but it was where his legend began. Logatown, too. The upcoming rookie presence is known. Luffy found himself standing face to face with Dragon, his biological father, in the middle of an armament hockey-infused vortex of howling winds. The Wolfman had been expecting the leader of the revolutionaries to show his face and speak with him after striking Buggy's bomb with that lightning bolt. However, just because he was prepared for the coming meeting didn't mean he was looking forward to it. Luffy's crew, bar Nami, had been unsure about leaving him with a hooded figure at first, but Nami's intervention had them going towards the Going Merry ahead of their captain. Luffy turned away from Dragon to take a glance at Smoker for a moment. The Marine captain was glaring holes at both Luffy and Dragon, but it was more vicious towards the latter. The reason likely not only stemming from the fact it looked like Dragon had come around looking for a fight with the up-and-coming rookie pirate, but the damage he'd inflicted to Smoker when the captain tried to enter the vortex as well. Smoker's arm was currently being tended to by a Marine medic on the sidelines due to the amount of lacerations the winds had left on it. So what exactly is it you want to talk about, Dragon? Turning back to his biological father, Luffy didn't feel even a twinge of guilt over the minute flinch the man did in response to his coldness. While playing along with my theatrics was appreciated, it doesn't come close to weighing against the risk of exposing the relationship between us. Dragon didn't say anything. He wasn't actually sure what to say. Back when he cornered Nami, his resolve in keeping Luffy in the dark was ironclad, but standing here, he began to doubt the decision he and his wife made a few days ago. Dragon's silence was getting on Luffy's nerves. I swear if this ends up being one of the Monkey D. Garp's blood influences all episodes, I'm going to. Someday, you will meet someone you can't beat. Not until you've awakened fully as well. Luffy wasn't sure what to make of that. Was that some roundabout way of telling him Kaido was in town? Or maybe it was something related to that Blackbeard fat ass? Even then, I doubt you'll be able to bring yourself to actually harm them. What the hell are you on, ABO? An acquaintance of mine awaits you in the Grand Line. She will prove invaluable as a member of your crew later on in your journey. Dragon quickly changed the topic as the familiar but unwelcome voices of his ex-coworkers entered his range of observation hockey. I believe you'll find her interesting personality amusing as well. Your marksman won't be enjoying her choice of humor though. Dragon kept his eyes on Luffy for a few moments longer before forcing the vortex to thicken around them. Get ready to run, Luffy. While I can guarantee the team leader's focus to be on me, his subordinates may now have an interest in me. I know. Luffy leveled a cold glare on Dragon that promised pain if the man didn't follow through with what had to say next. Keep my brother safe, and stay away from my crew. I don't know what you cornered her for and frankly I don't care but from here on out, Nami doesn't have anything to do with our side of the family's shit, not until the final phases of your plan, got it? Dragon blinked before bursting into laughter. Oh, history truly did enjoy repeating itself didn't it? She's a feisty one, my boy. Don't ever let her go. Wasn't planning on it, old man. Tashigi knew she should have also kept her eyes on Monkey D. Luffy and Dragon. She knew it was her duty as a marine to keep them both at the forefront of her mind. Unfortunately, instead of giving so much as a smidgen of care for the two men who were likely the strongest combatants in the East Blue without question, Tashigi found herself thinking more about her parting words with one, Roronoa Zoro. Flashback. Tashigi grit her teeth in frustration as she found herself on the ground held at sword point in her own blade, Shigur, stuck into a building's wall. She may have hated his guts but she didn't have her head so far up her ass that she wasn't going to acknowledge Roronoa's skills as a swordsman. With a scathing glare Tashigi growled, well, what are you waiting for? Finish it, Roronoa. Zoro kept his gaze on her with an unreadable expression before pulling his blade away. No. You've been disarmed, knocked off your feet, and been held at blade's edge. Sheathing his new blades as well as his most treasured one, Zoro turned away from Tashigi. Is it because I'm a woman? Zoro froze mid-step. Of all the things this marine could have said, she chose one that dragged up even more memories of Kuina. Is that it? You won't finish me off because I'm a woman. You won't take me seriously because you're some macho man who can't be bothered to. I didn't take you seriously because your swordsmanship is honestly laughable. Zoro's words came out in a calm tone however the vice captain of the Straw Hats was anything but calm. Turning back to his defeated opponent, Tashigi saw the barely repressed fury in his eyes and found herself wondering if she'd inadvertently stepped on a figurative landmine. I didn't kill you because there would be no honor in ending someone who was as dangerous as his own child running around with a sharp cutter. You want my blade, my memento from Kuina. Zoro unsheathed Wado Ikimonji and spun it around so the handle was within Tashigi's grasp. The marine looked at it for a few moments before moving to reach for it only for Zoro to take it away yet again. Then get strong enough to actually have a chance to do it. You dream of liberating all grade swords. Then do more than just read about them. Train to be competent enough to actually make your dreams reality. You want Kuina's blade? I'll be waiting, Tashigi. Zoro resheathed the Wado Ichimonji before walking away. This time, he didn't turn back, he did turn to the left and into an alley though. Tashigi was quiet for a few moments as she remained there, on the floor in contemplation for a little while longer. Wrong way, jackass. The town square is behind us. Flashback. Tashigi shook her head with a small smile. If the bastard was going to lecture her then try to leave like he was the star of a drama movie he should have at least just walked forward instead of showcasing his awful sense of direction. Though, he doesn't really look like someone who watches dramas. The young woman smirked in amusement before steeling herself. To gain something, you had to lose something. Zoro lost his time, his childhood and his life as a free man. What has Tashigi lost? Nothing substantial in comparison really. Her training in the Marines was thorough and the education she received under Captain Smoker's tutelage was incredible, but it still didn't hold a candle to the road Roronoa was taking. Compared to him, I've been living life with a silver spoon, that ends today. The chief petty officer turned back to the vortex just in time for the swirling winds to become denser and darker. A black cyclone in the middle of the street. I suppose this means that Dragon has the weather fruit. I wouldn't be so sure. Smoker exhaled a long stream of smoke as he stood up and glared at the spot where Monkey D. Luffy and Dragon once stood. The vortex had dissipated only to reveal that the two who had been conversing within it were gone with the wind. Many devil fruits grant abilities similar to others. For all we know it could be Mythical Zoan. I suppose so. Though, don't Mythical Zone fruits require their user to make changes to their body in order to activate their abilities? Tashigi had seen Fleet Admiral Sengoku in action before and every time he activated his abilities he had transformed in one way or another. From her understanding, Kaido the Beast was no different. Depends on the ability, I guess. The Phoenix is able to call upon flames of healing while in his human form after all. Controlling the weather may just be one of Dragon's abilities that doesn't require transformations. Smoker had really just been making small talk while the real thing that had been bothering him since seeing Luffy and Dragon so close to one another continued to fester in the back of his mind. Tashigi, would you say Dragon and Straw Hat look similar? Sir. Tashigi tilted her head in confusion at her captain's not only abrupt but strange question. If the similarities Smoker was talking about was the cold look in their eyes and their wild black hair then she supposed they look similar but, I'm inclined to say no, Captain Smoker. Aside from maybe their hair and their eyes, nothing about Dragon reminds me of Straw Hat. I see, Tashigi, see to our men as well as the prisoners. There's something I need to check on. Privately. Marching into his office, Smoker locked the door behind him before approaching his desk. Pushing his chair away, the Marine captain knelt down and removed a plank from the floor. The space underneath was filled with files given to Smoker and many other Marines who had been under Garp's personal tutelage. Marines who believed there was more to criminals than meets the eye. Smoker was one of the more punch first and ask later Marines that had come out of Garp's wing, but he was still willing to hear out a criminal. Well, when they were in cuffs and behind bars anyway. Rifling through the folders, Smoker pulled out the one he hoped would alleviate his growing unease. This particular folder contained information on ex-Marines. Specifically, Marines who no longer existed on record, not only as a member of society but as a person as a whole. Some of them became revolutionaries, others became high-ranking figures in the underworld. God only knows how many have fallen under Joker's control. Dropping the folder onto the desk, Smoker began flipping through file after file. Men and women who were once Marine officers of ranks as high or even higher than his own, gone like the wind, leaving no trace behind. No traces except for the files themselves. One thing Smoker learned while under Garp was that as aloof and generally chaotic as the legendary Vice Admiral was, that he had instincts and gut feelings that did more than enough to make up for his outward stupidity. Smoker paused on a file that was likely the most detailed of them all. A picture of a woman with long curly raven hair held up in a ponytail stared back at Smoker with eerily familiar golden amber eyes bursting with mischief. Her tan sun-kissed skin from hours of work and activity under the sun also similar. Even without ever having met this young woman, Smoker could tell she was as much of a loose cannon as Garp. Reading through the information on her proved Smoker wrong about his comparison, however, his eyes widening as he read further and further. If anything, this woman made Garp look like a model Marine. Smoker shook his head and forced himself to return to his original goal. While it was not just this woman who had multiple pictures in their files, there was one photo at a specific angle that Smoker needed to see right this moment. When the Marine captain found the image he was looking for, the cigars he smoked religiously nearly dropped from his mouth. The woman was facing the camera, sporting a wide shit-eating grin as what looked like hell on earth took place behind her. It wasn't the savagery of what was behind her that froze Smoker, however, it wasn't even the fact that she was holding the spinal cord with her victim's head still attached. The victim being a pirate known for raping his way through any female, ANY female. Yeah, Smoker may not have enjoyed her playing executioner, but seeing as the world was rid of scum like that, he could shrug it off. Off topic. Anyway, it was the smile itself and the way her face just radiated insanity that froze him, the uncanny similarity between her smile and a certain rookie's. Reaching for a piece of parchment on the far side of the table, Smoker forced his eyes away from the woman, and to the young man sporting the exact same smile, exuding the same manic energy, oblivious to the fact that he just had his photo taken for the creation of his first bounty. Fuck. Flicking his eyes back to the top of the file where the young woman's name was written, Smoker immediately pulled out a black transponder snail, one specifically made to patch him directly to Garp without ever giving himself away or risk having their call intercepted. What do you want, barbecue boy? The snail grinned cheekily at Smoker, the man on the other end of the line really hoping to get a rise out of his old student, but the Marine captain couldn't care less at the moment. Massaham Sarah. The cheekiness was gone like it was never in the snail's, and by thus Garp's, face to begin with. What happened to your daughter, Garp? Why did she defect from the Marines? Quote. Smoker. You know me to be a very faithful follower of the Marines, of duty, but you also know just how much more family means to me. Smoker's glare cooled slightly as the snail began to shake as it copied the hero of the Marines' expression. Pure, unchained fury. What they did to my daughter. If not for Sengoku, I would have leveled all of Mariajoy straight into the ground, and put all those celestial bastards' heads on a pike. On a certain island in paradise, an establishment known as Shaki's Rip-Off Bar currently hosted the most jovial and laid-back of the 4 emperors of the sea, Red Hair Shanks. Ha 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 ha. Keep em coming, Shaki. This party ain't over till Ben gets back. Isn't that right, boys? A chorus of, aye aye captain. Left Shanks feeling better than ever. Shaki laughing along with her husband's former crew's cabin boy while walking to the storeroom in the back. The 12th crate of alcohol was coming up. Ever since Mihawk had come over and brought Luffy's first bounty to him on that tropical jungle island, every evening was spent drinking themselves unconscious. Ben was becoming a party pooper recently, so Shanks sent him and Lucky Roo out to see if they could spot Rayleigh. Fat chance of that happening. Rayleigh's been evading the Marines in plain sight for decades after all. Say, Captain, a spiky-haired redhead with dark skin called out to Shanks. If ya don't mind me asking, who exactly is this Straw Hat Luffy? We've been partying in his honor a lot and you make mentions of him like you knew him as a kid, is he? With a chuckle, Shanks cut off his latest crew member with a wave of his hand while turning to face him. Luffy's not my son, Rockstar. Well, not a biological one anyway. Oh, but he is your... Rockstar found himself interrupted a second time, but not by Shanks. Rockstar was interrupted by the sudden opening of the doors to Shaki's bar. Back already, Vice, Captain, Ben? Rockstar's voice trailed off as he, and every other pirate present in the bar turned to face the newcomer with widening eyes. Even Shanks was caught off guard with just who or rather what had decided to walk in. God almighty, was I that drunk? Everything all right, red hair? You look like you've seen a ghost. The newcomer, a woman with short scarlet red hair that framed her face hidden behind a faceless mask bearing intricate designs, fair skin like the purest snow and emerald green eyes that gleamed with a veritable treasure trove of power behind the mask. While the woman's physique was breathtaking enough to sway some of the red hair pirates to more perverted thoughts, her curvaceous hourglass figure would have given even the pirate empress a run for her money. The clothes she wore bearing a very much despised mark brought them back to their senses. The mark of the one hailed as the one to crush even the strongest of pirate crews with the ease of peeling a fruit. From the physique and general lack of marks, wears, and tears on her skin however, Rockstar doubted she was the actual monster but one of the handmaidens who attended to it. Dare I say, all of you look as if you've seen ghosts. The red hair pirates weren't cowards, a fact that Rockstar stood up to prove as he clenched his fists and grounded his teeth. What business do you have with us, ma'am? Rockstar wasn't a coward but he wasn't foolish enough to not show some degree of respect. The high and mighty bastards this woman served were complete jokes, but the woman herself. Hard-headed as Rockstar was even he knew a ticking time bomb when he saw one. If you came here looking for toys, you've. As if Rockstar was not even there, the woman who served one who could claim to stand head-to-head against Edward Newgate himself, in his prime no less, commented on their surroundings. I knew you had a reputation for being quite the drunkard but I must say I wasn't quite expecting it to be this extravagant. Bottles and even more bottles of alcohol littered the floor. There was probably enough to fill up a pool. Not quite sure how I feel about you as a role. Don't ignore me you stuck-up, arrogant witch of AGHK. Rockstar's experience from getting wrecked on Whitebeard's ship clearly hadn't sucked in as he now found himself in another unfavorable position. The unfavorable position being that the woman who, by her appearance, had no business being anything but a frail pompous bitch abusing her mistress's power, was currently lifting him off the ground with an amused smirk as if he was a stress relief doll. Why a stress relief doll? Because she was squeezing the life out of him like a teenage girl venting their troubles through strangling Mr. Snuffles. See Captain H. help. Contrary to his crew, Shanks just sighed tiredly amidst the growing anxiety and anger spreading amongst his men. You've made your point, Valkyrie. You mind dropping the latest member of my crew down? With a shrug, the masked woman let her grip on Rockstar's neck slack, allowing the man to fall to his knees as he greedily gulped on much-needed oxygen. If your love for alcohol wasn't doing you any favors, being not only rude but also quick-tempered certainly doesn't help my estimation of you as a role model. Why cough would we care about being role models you ack, I mean, ma'am. The sweetly frightening glare was enough to set Rockstar straight this time. Shame, the masked woman would have enjoyed crushing him under her boot. Simpleton seemed to have finally figured out she wasn't the handmaiden, but the queen herself. It only took the man's captain saying her epithet out loud but better slow than eviscerated. I don't expect little fishes like yourself to care. Frankly I don't expect anyone here who wasn't there to care. Taking the seat next to Shanks, the masked woman came face to face with Shaggy who to her credit, put on an award-winning smile before asking. How may I serve you today madam? Valkyrie will do. Drop the madam and just stick to that, or Val if you like. Also, reaching behind her, the masked woman pulled out a fat stack of berries and slammed it on the table. Payment for the drinks prior and the drinks to come. All on me. Silence, and then the biggest backstab Rockstar ever felt in his life. Cheers, to Madam Val. You're the best Ms. Valkyrie. You can beat the crap out of Rockstar any day of the week, sis. That last one hit Rockstar the hardest, mainly because not only had it come from his captain and idol, Shanks, but the man had also tossed his arm around the red-headed woman's shoulder. Like they were the oldest of buddies. Shanks never did that with him. A cloud of depression rained down on the young pirate as the cruelty of the world was in full swing. But seriously, who are you and why are you here? Shanks whispered his question and despite the smile planted on his face, it was clear the Emperor was ready for things to turn into a fight. His wariness was proven unnecessary however, the moment he saw the woman's face. The woman had been quiet for a few moments before taking off her mask and flashing the captain a playful smile before putting it back on. You know, I knew there would be many things in the world that just make no goddamn sense but do at the same time, but this is just too insane. Even for me. The masked woman threw her head back with a laugh pleasantly reminiscent of a soft summer breeze. You sailed with the Pirate King himself yet this takes the cake for being too insane? The quick deadpan response of yes only caused the woman more amusement. Towards the end of the night she began to realize why Shanks was highly respected amongst his peers and idolized by many. The man was like the older brother you always looked up to no matter what insanity they found themselves. Holy Amu above, was there an abundance of insanity in the man's partying. Val didn't really have any right to comment or criticize on the admittedly childish captain's sense of humor. Hers was much worse after all. This was proven by the aftermath witnessed by a very twitchy-eyed ex-vice captain who decided to pop in and check on his wife. Quote. Shanks was scratching the back of head sheepishly as his old vice captain's eye twitched in frustration seeing what had become of he and his wife's home. Shanks, care to explain why there are sharks, live sharks, swimming around my bar? And exactly how you even managed to accomplish this? Shanks opened his mouth to answer only to snap his mouth shut at the scathing glare sent his way. You know what? I don't even care anymore. I'm going back to the brothel. Is that really something you should say in front of Shaggy? The former apprentice of the Roger Pirates asked with a sweat drop. The sweat drop disappeared and instead the Emperor's face became green when Shaggy laughed and wrapped her arm around Rayleigh and gave him, Shanks, a come hither look. I liked it better when you didn't pull this crap in front of me. Grow up, Anchor. Oi, huh, wait, is that where you got Luffy's nickname? It was yours. Lucky Roo was staring at his captain intensely as he chewed on his giant stick of meat, before turning away. Yeah, I can see it. What's that supposed to mean? Oh nothing. A woman renowned by all for her unquestionable beauty was conflicted. With a wry smile set on the raven-haired woman's face she held up the bounty of one, Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy. The sadistic smile on the young man's face being one she had become very familiar with long ago. Memories of her raven-haired ex-mistress's fury over her and her sister's situation, the woman shuddered recalling the conditions they were in before the woman found them and took them away from those hideous pigs. The only respectable celestial dragon, well I suppose her father was also kind to us but it was clear who was calling the shots. The woman mused as she scratched her pet snake's chin, the slithery reptilian hissing approvingly all the while. Seeing as our savior's son has decided to take on a pirate's life, and we've been informed of the demands of his devil fruit, I trust you both have no objection to my proposition. In front of the woman who looked like she was the incarnation of perfection, two giant women kneeled, like actual giants, or mini giants. They were big by normal human standards but tiny by giant standards. One had wavy green hair and gleaming green eyes while the other had orange wavy hair and cerulean blue eyes.
Sister, would it not be better if one of us took your place instead? The green-haired mini giantess asked anxiously. Even if this man is our lady's kin there is no guarantee that he will have her heart. I agree with Sandersonia, sister. Who's to say that this man is in any way at all not like all other scum? The orange-haired giantess added, also not keen on her eldest sister's proposal. This may not even be what our lady wants. The woman leaned back into her throne thoughtfully. You both have valid concerns, Marigold. But I must ask, if this is not what our lady seeks then why would she bother telling us about her son's unique circumstances? Both Sandersonia and Marigold shifted anxiously at that as well. There really wasn't any other reason they could think of. And as for why I will be the one to go through with it and not either the two of you or anyone else in Amazon Lily, there isn't really anyone other than myself who's worthy of even being considered. The woman stated matter-of-factly yet without any hint of condescension. If anything, the most beautiful woman in the world was frustrated. Not only was Monkey D. Luffy the son of the woman who saved her and her sisters all those years ago, he was also going to be the spearhead that breaks the cycle of shit their world was currently running with. This is the man who will be king. Offering anything less than myself would be an insult. There is nothing we can say to dissuade you from this, is there, sister? Marigold sighed wearily already knowing the answer. No, there isn't, little sister. I, Boa Hancock, will offer myself to Monkey D. Luffy. The Pirate Empress declared this with a tone of finality as she turned her attention from her sisters back to the bounty of her future king. May this be enough to ensure Amazon Lily's prosperity after the wheel has been broken. On a massive galleon designed bearing great resemblance to that of the underside of a whale, the legend hailed the strongest man in the world, and drank the last of his fellow emperor's hometown sake. Pops, you know if Marco catches you right now you'll be put on bed rest again.
Bah, the old man waved off his son's warning about what his worrywart flaming pineapple of a son would do if he got caught. Why do you think I sent him on an errand to Fishman Island? Garararara. The members of his crew, his sons, that were present either laughed or sweat dropped at their father's outright admittance to sending the 1st Division commander off on a random errand just so he could indulge himself with a drink. To hell with Marco's hissy fits about his drinking, death was around the corner anyway. Edward Newgate, more commonly known as Whitebeard, was well aware that his days were numbered. He didn't find himself regretful of much though, save for the more recent developments, he found his life to be quite fulfilled. He's had a grand adventure few could even argue to best, he has his family, his beloved sons and daughters, by his side and sailing the seas, he even found someone to take the reins after he passed, assuming the bloody hothead matured after getting his ass handed to him. Whitebeard sighed as his mind turned to Ace and Teach for what had to have been the millionth time this week. When news came of just what devil fruit Teach had consumed, Whitebeard was ready to go drag Ace back to the Moby Dick himself but unfortunately for the elderly captain of the Whitebeard pirates, his two former crewmates and current fellow emperors were not going to let his absence go unpunished. Lin and Kato had been decent crewmates but as fellow emperors they were little more than the biggest contributing factor in his unfortunately very frequent migraines. I suppose it will be up to you, won't it? Whitebeard mused to himself as he glanced down on the bounty in his right hand. Another D. Huh, perhaps this one will end up being the one you sought after, old friend. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, a man known for being the brains behind Garp's brawn back in their youth and even to this day. Another living legend that stood as a role model for any new Marines to look up to. A man whose only superiors were the Gorosei themselves, was currently rubbing his eyes in exasperation over the absolute shitstorm he'd found himself having to tolerate in his office. The shitstorm being the volatile and volcanic Admiral Akainu, an avid, fanatic follower of absolute justice.
Fleet Admiral, with all due respect sir, have you gone senile? Contrary to what one would expect from one known as the Mad Dog of the Navy, Akainu was usually a calm, cold and calculating individual. Outwardly anyway. While capable of having a cool head, his actions are more often than not driven by his fanatics in his pursuit of thorough justice, an eighth warlord? If 7 of these bastards weren't enough you want to throw another one into the mix? A rookie no less? With a heavy sigh, Sengoku leveled a glare on Akainu who, while still set on stopping the addition of yet another warlord to the rooster, was willing to no longer pursue the latest thorn on his side himself. A rookie, huh? A rookie who has been more of a vigilante hero than a pirate. A rookie who has done more for the people of every place he visited, except perhaps Logatown, than any Marine posted there. A pirate who's been more loose cannon Marine than actual scum. Sengoku stood up from his chair and towered over Akainu with his frustration very much evident on his face. I'm sorry that the concept of having an 8th warlord is very uncomfortable for you, but quite frankly, Monkey D. Luffy would prove more reliable as an asset rather than an enemy.
Akainu was ready to retort,
his anger rising though more out of the fact that his pride had been wounded, which was actually the crux of his entire tirade. A young pirate boy who had just started flying his flag, had done more for the islands he'd visited than any of the marines posted there, except Logatown. A pirate is still a pirate, Fleet Admiral. Having him as a warlord only invites him to be a ravenous wolf amongst the sheep. A dog is a domesticated wolf, Akainu. If it helps get you and your fellow marines of similar ideologies, Sengoku shifted his eyes to behind Akainu for a moment to glare at the vice admirals who had accompanied the steaming piece of cow dung, out of my office, then Monkey D. Luffy will be the guard dog for our sheep as you refer to them. Akainu opened his mouth to continue his quest of stopping the inclusion of an eighth warlord with Sengoku, but his fellow absolute justice marine, Doberman, interrupted him. The fleet admiral has spoken, Akainu. The order has been given. Let it go. Akainu stared back at Doberman for a few seconds before turning to his other fellow absolute justice marine, Onagumo. The long brown-haired vice admiral with perpetually half-closed eyes, nodded in agreement with Doberman. We won't be changing his mind. Might as well go and deal with things in our jurisdiction instead. An apt proposal. Monkey D. Luffy has yet to even enter the Grand Line, so while he's hundreds and hundreds of miles away, why don't you actually do your job, Sakazuki? Akainu snapped back to his commanding officer with a momentary sneer, before schooling his features and accepting the order. Understood, Fleet Admiral. As the three absolute justice marines left his office, Sengoku let out a tired sigh. In all honesty, he himself wasn't particularly over the moon with having an eighth warlord, but between that and running the risk of Garp being torn apart by duty and family, Sengoku had already done many things in his life that he regretted. Tearing his best friend apart, no matter how infuriating the man may be at times, was not something he wanted to add on to the already long list. Speaking of the list, Sengoku glared down at the latest dismissal of human lives by the Gorosei. Perhaps Monkey D. Luffy can deal with his future peers for us. Starting with you, you sick, scaly bastard. On the desk of the fleet admiral of the Marines was the picture of one Gecko Mariah, and the latest batch of victims he'd acquired from the Florian Triangle. If there's a god in this world, I hope he lets Luffy rip you to shreds. Lieutenant Commander Asuka, can you clarify something for me? A Marine soldier with blonde hair in a buzz cut, blue hawk-like eyes, and carefully blank expression asked the commanding officer of the unit he had been asked to check in on. The lieutenant commander, Asuka, being a woman in her early 20s with short red hair that framed her fair sun-kissed face, hard cocoa irises, and a slim physique, responded, of course, Special Agent Flint Barson. What may I clarify for you? Flint regarded Asuka with an unwavering stare a bit longer than the lieutenant commander found comfortable before shooting his question. Are you in a relationship with the 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, Portgas D. Ace? Asuka's jaw dropped momentarily as her face flushed brighter than her hair. Me and F Firefist. Of course not. Don't be absurd. A cheeky light lit up in Flint's eyes as he thanked his direct superior, one Monkey D. Garp, for granting him the mission of grilling the blushing woman before him. No. Then how exactly have you not only encountered and cornered Portgas on many occasions but come out unscathed? Even returning to your unit with, how did they put it, a love-struck teenage girl's face after a delightful date with her boo.
Wah, who said that? Asuka jumped up from her chair and slammed her hands onto her desk as she turned to the door behind Flint. Stone, I will make your morning routine a living hell. I swear to God. The cackles that accompanied the unapologetic and dare he say smug response from Stone had Flint breaking his blank expression in favor of chuckling. Worth every push-up, ma'am. If it means you stop beating around the bush, we all would go through that hell. The chorus of additional support to Stone's claim broke any semblance of professionalism Flint had as he blatantly began laughing his ass off. I agree with Kite wholeheartedly, ma'am. Your secret forbidden romance was adorable and saucy at first, but at this point you two should just get hitched already. Gravel, the unit's mechanic, supplemented with a cheeky smile so clearly on his face, neither Flint nor Asuka needed to see it to know it was there. I'm with Stone and Gravel as well, Brace the marine chemist agreed. You and Firefist shouldn't even bother dating anymore. Just get hitched already. Kite, Sauce, Dunder. You are all dead. You hear me? Asuka roared with more than enough indignant fury to put the likes of Nami to shame. Geez guys, lay off our lieutenant would ya? She and Firefist ain't dating. Asuka smiled hearing the one other female in her unit having her back. I knew you were my favorite for a reason, Shawnees. Those two are well past that point if the inside out, crumpled clothes are indication. It's a wonder we don't have little freckled redheads running around. Shawnees Dove, you backstabbing bitch. Ha 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 ha. My lungs. Oh my god, my lungs. Ha 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 ha. Flint was absolutely loving his latest assignment. One he was so glad was being recorded. While thou words are quite vulgar, I cannot deny Lady Shawnee's claims as false. It is only through divine intervention that thy commander has not brought life into the whir. I will rip that stupidly long and silky smooth blonde hair you love so much if you don't shut the fuck up right now, you outdated language-loving, hammerphiliac wannabe Viking. Shutting up now. The North Blue Marine, Dor Turkeson, conceded with a whimper. Flint was dying, but at the moment he couldn't care less. If this was how he went out, he had no complaints. His life was fulfilled 10 times over this day. Weeks later, when the recorded interrogation found itself in Garp's hand, the Marine Vice Admiral rumbled with so much laughter the residents of the island he found himself resting on thought an earthquake had begun. Years later, Garp and Flint would laugh their asses off once again, even as an enraged bride made good use of her husband's gift to chase after the two with the goal of slicing them apart like butter. The husband would be torn between chasing Garp and Flint or the two brothers who were blatantly laughing and pointing at him. The latest rookies entering paradise or something, aren't they, Captain? A tall, slender man of pale complexion expressed with a smile. Sporting an off-white collared long-sleeve shirt patterned with yellow crossed and navy jumper pants, the man smiled down on his captain who had a collection of bounties spread out before him. Very impressive indeed, especially that one from the east. The pale man's captain was another large individual, but unlike the subordinate, the captain was rotund, hairy, tanned and quite a bit more humble-looking in his open-buttoned white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, green trousers, a yellow sash around his waist and black swashbuckler boots. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha. I'm not surprised considering who his older brother is. The captain responded with a toothy grin. Give or take a few plaque-riddled yellow teeth. It may seem impressive now, but the true bounty he should have, Nothing mind-breaking, Captain. Another unusually big, tall, broad and muscular individual with tanned skin, and proportionally thinner lower body. The man was a wrestler who spent way too much time on his upper body and skipped out on leg day for sure, but the way he was built. Even if he's related to some chump from old Whitebeard's crew, he's still just a roo. His brother is Portgas D. Ace, the 2nd Division commander of Whitebeard's crew. The massive wrestler shut his mouth at his captain's rebuttal and amused smirk. As for his bounty, his real bounty, I'd wager he's a big enough threat to be considered at least 350 million Barris. 500 million Barris at most for what he's done so far. Oh my. Is he really that impressive? The posh pale man asked with intrigue while his companions, the wrestler as well as two other very tall individuals, sported looks of unrepressed shock. Perhaps there was a height requirement for the infamous pirate captain to even consider allowing anyone into his crew. For someone to actually be dangerous enough to reach that level while still being a rookie, do tell what's earned him such a high assessment, Captain. Not been reading the news, Lafitte? I was sure you'd be one to always keep up to date with such matters. The captain took a jab at his most, shall we say, refined subordinate. Lafitte scoffed and shot one of his companions, a man with light brown hair that hung down to his neck, dressed in a large black hat with an uncanny resemblance to an upturned boat's hull, a long black cape under which lay a button-up pale lavender shirt, simple black pants, and black shoes. Wearing a monocle and polishing a rifle, the companion paused his maintenance of his beloved weapon to give Lafitte a blank look. Perhaps I would be up to date if someone were not using the news coup as target practice every time one came around. I have no idea what you're talking about, the tall man with a strange monocle stated before returning to maintaining his rather large sniper rifle. The captain's sweat dropped as a tick mark appeared on Lafitte's temple and he found himself wondering if he should stop the two from fighting, or watching with glee while chowing down on cherry pies. Anyway, Captain, if you'd please. Oh yes. The reason for such a high bounty would be the fact that Straw Hat Luffy has shown himself to be capable of fighting arguably the strongest warlord of the seven. Dracul Mahawk himself. The captain spared his crew a glance as they all began sharing looks of understanding. At the level that Mahawk and Shanks, the youngest emperor of the seas, clash on every other month. The return of Jaws falling down in shock whilst the rotund captain laughed in his own unique way. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha. I trust it goes without saying, all traces of amusement left the captain's eyes as he leveled a cold glare on his subordinates. That we are not to engage in combat of any kind with Monkey D. Luffy, and if we do, grab his crew and use them against him. The massive wrestler smashed a fist into his hand with a gleeful smile filled with bloodthirsty hunger. This reaction was not responded to in the way the wrestler was expecting. His captain facepalmed with a tired groan as if this was not the first time he'd had this conversation. What's wrong, Captain? Nothing, Burgess, I'm just reminded of how much you rely on your brawn rather than your brain, much like my old division commander was. The captain returned to giving each and every one of his crew members a frigid glare that would have made even the admiral of Ice Aokiji freeze. You attack or harm his crew in any way, then it will be curtains for us all. No, I want you to place yourselves in a position where both our crew and his walks away, unharmed. See, Captain? Those are my orders, Burgess. A dark aura of pure evil, an ever-consuming power draped over the captain who glared at his subordinate from over his shoulder, Burgess and his companions all shuddering under their captain's insidious abilities. Understood? Yes, Captain Blackbeard, sir, Burgess and his companions all said, shivering in their boots. They respected and were loyal to their captain, but that didn't change the fact that the man known as Blackbeard, Marshal D. Teach, was utterly frightening. Good. Turning back to watch all the bounties of the up-and-coming rookies making their way to paradise, 3 in particular had caught his eye. Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar D. Law, Straw Hat, Monkey D. Luffy and Captain Eustace Kidd. Wait, his epithet is Captain? I know the Marines can drop the ball on epithets from time to time, but I'm fairly certain that this just takes the cake. Agreed. No kidding. Having reached a consensus on the Marines' inability to have made even an ounce of effort in what to grace the rookie, Eustace Kidd, with Teach began to ponder deeply as to how these new developments would result in modifications to his plan. The Kidd pirates made a name for themselves for their ruthlessness, and while they are rookies they weren't idiots, so that dish was out of the menu. In the case of Trafalgar D. Law, his crew wasn't the worst, but Teach had zero doubts that even he alone could trample over all of them. The problem with the Heart Pirates was the captain himself. Certainly not the Gura Gura no Mi, but still ridiculously dangerous in its own right. Trafalgar D. Law would also not be served to the world government. Lastly, Monkey D. Luffy. Marshal D. Teach was a man many had a hard time figuring out. Some days he was as jolly as could be, munching on cherry pies like Charlotte Linlin feasted on sweets. Other days he was insanity incarnate, wreaking havoc on anything and everything he passed. Then there were days like today where the captain of the Blackbeard pirates was quiet and contemplating, seemingly playing a long game of chess where he was always 10 steps ahead of his prey. With a complete mouthful of pearly whites, Blackbeard laughed, realizing what would have to be done. It would be a gamble, but if Ace's words were true. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. I'm looking forward to claiming your devil fruit pops. Zee-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. Luffy and the rest of his crew had never felt more alive than they have at this very moment. Ironic considering they were all at Mother Nature's mercy at the moment, and she did not seem at all happy. The storm raged on, and true to her claims, Nami not only managed to keep them afloat, it wouldn't be far-fetched to say they were thriving because of her guidance. Where other ships would have failed and sunk below the depths despite their navigators' best efforts, Nami's commands and control over the wheel had them experiencing what anyone else in those conditions considered smooth sailing. Zoro and Sanji found themselves doing the majority of the work, at least when it came to following Nami's orders on what to do on the ship to keep it on course and afloat. Luffy found himself on the Going Merry's figurehead, releasing pulses of Conqueror's haki to keep the Sea Kings at bay. For whatever reason, the beasts had left their hunting and breeding grounds in the calm belt and come out to play. Luffy had been running around with Zoro and Sanji earlier on Nami's orders, but after the first Sea King rose to the surface picking a fight, no arguments were made about Luffy's new job. Usopp was positioned at the crow's nest and kept an eye out for the landmark Nami said he couldn't miss even if he tried. She wasn't wrong. I see the lighthouse, guys. Usopp screamed in elation. His mood was infectious as the crew below grinned, delighted by their marksman's report. Adjust course, 30 degrees to the right, Nami. Heard. Nami did as told, making the change with practiced ease. Looking back up to the nest, Nami called out, "You can come on down now, Usopp. I have a feeling Luffy has something to say. Same goes for the two of you. Lock in the mainsail, then wait for the rest of us there on deck."
Aye aye, Nami, of course, Nami-chan. Nami's eye twitched at Sanji's insistence on adding Chan to her name, but compared to Nami Swan, she'll deal with it. Didn't mean there wasn't some justice in the world. Bonk. Damn Arrow Cook, quit calling her that. Zoro growled as Sanji turned to face him with a scowl, getting in the swordsman's face with a glare. If you're so desperate for a beating, just ask. You're the one cruising for a beatin', shitty Marimo. Sanji jabbed his finger at Zoro, who reached for his swords with a malicious grin. One mirrored by the blonde swirly eyebrowed Cook. I haven't gotten to pay you back for what you did to the pretty Marine back on Logatown. That's it. You're minced meat, you blonde skirt-chasing swirly-eyed horndog. We'll see about that, you uncultured swine. Nami rolled her eyes as the sounds of steel-tipped boots and razor-sharp blades clashing filled the air, only slightly muffled by the howling winds. She'd complain, but she couldn't argue with the results of the two of them constantly fighting against each other, both in it for the kill. Armament haki was second nature to those two monsters now. Zoro's armament outshined Sanji's in pure force, but in terms of skillful mastery, the Cook of the Straw Hats had the upper hand. All in all, the two ended up being balanced against the other, while Nami and Usopp remained the weakest members of the crew, the number one weakest being up in the air as there was no clear distinction between them yet. Nami had a better chance in close combat than Usopp, and once her Kleem attack was finally completed, her capabilities in ranged combat would skyrocket. The same could be said for Usopp, however, as while the marksman himself had been too chicken to ask for it, Luffy had no issues bringing up an increased allowance for Usopp to not only purchase the materials he needed for Nami's Kleem attack but the marksman's own projects as well. Nami's sweat dropped just recalling the amount of thank yous and shed tears Usopp had as he hugged Luffy like there was no tomorrow. Sidetracked. The same could be said for Usopp, as with the addition of the cross gauntlet, a crossbow slingshot attached to a gauntlet, and his machetes, Zoro approved, the Straw Hats marksman also got a boon to his close quarters combat. Nami locked in the wheel, making sure they'd remain on course for what she expected would be the amount of time Luffy needed to get whatever he wanted done, over with. We all set out to achieve different goals, but the road to completing each and every one of them coincides with the other. Luffy slammed a barrel down in the center of the deck, right between Zoro and Sanji, who had their blade's edge and steel-tipped boot respectively, millimeters away from their captain's head. The road won't be easy, but nothing in life ever is. So long as you remain steadfast in achieving your dreams, I'll be damned if I let anything stand in your way to get to it. Be they Marines, pirates, celestial dragons, or even God himself. I'll deal with anybody and everybody who stands in our way myself if I have to. I believe I speak for all of us when I say that the same goes for you, Luffy. Zoro supplied a grin that was mirrored by the rest of the crew. I set out to become the greatest swordsman, and I'll be damned if I let anyone get in my captain's way to his own dreams.
We may not be much now, but in the short time you've been with us, our powers have gone through the roof. Sanji put his own 2 cents in with a solemn expression. A solemn expression that quickly morphed into a smirk. It won't be today or tomorrow, but I'll go rot in Davy Jones's locker before I accept never once being able to stand by your side, Captain. I the Great, I wasn't anything but a liar when you took me in. Luffy and the others listened intently to Usopp the moment the marksman stopped himself on his own and openly admitted his terrible past. I lied, told tall tales, made exaggerated adventures for the heck of it, but no more. I used to fight from a distance where my foes couldn't fight back, but none of that any further either. You showed me what it means to truly become a warrior, and I'll sail till the ends of the earth with you and back, Captain. You liberated me. Nami whispered, her eyes watering slightly but no tears fell. You liberated me, my village, my family, and you became my world, my anchor in an ocean that wanted to wash me away, my beacon to show me the way home. You, Monkey D. Luffy, are my everything, and nothing will stop me from making sure we all, Straw Hats of today and of the future, achieve our dreams by journey's end. Zoro, Nami, Usopp and Sanji's words caused Luffy's heart to beat powerfully in his chest, but it wasn't an unpleasant feeling, it was the opposite. With a wide, 1,000-watt smile, Luffy raised his foot and slammed it down onto the barrel. To become the Pirate King.
Zoro slammed his foot, to become the world's greatest swordsman. Sanji slammed his foot, to find the All Blue. Usopp slammed his foot, to become a true warrior of the sea. Nami slammed her foot, to make a map of the whole world. The barrel broke under the pressure as all the Straw Hats shouted to the heavens, to the Grand Line and beyond.